subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Chapter 1. Soul travels to Marvel? Ding, ding, ding. The military pager fell to the ground, and S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Fury looked at his body, which quickly turned to ashes in amazement. After saying, "Damn it," he turned into ashes and dissipated in the wind on the streets of New York. Finally, a mark resembling Captain Marvel appeared on the pager screen. This is a movie Easter egg from Avengers 3. When the film reaches this point in the cinema projection room, the names of the behind-the-scenes staff begin to appear from the bottom to the top, heralding the end of the film. That's it? Thanos hasn't been killed yet. Many audience members chatted with each other, picked up their belongings, and left the theater projection room one after another. High school student Lu Ming sat in the best seat for watching movies in a daze, holding a large cup of popcorn tube in his arms, and was still immersed in the Marvel story that had just happened. It's no wonder that more than a dozen Marvel independent films were used as a prelude. Doctor Strange saw millions of possible endings in the future, but in the end, he was still betrayed by his idiot teammate Star-Lord. Captain America and Iron Man are still okay. Their combat performances in both the universe and the universe are at the top level. Thanos is truly the behind-the-scenes boss of Marvel's third phase. He can kill half of all life in the universe with a snap of his fingers. Spider-Man just returned. Black Panther is very popular. More than half of the superheroes died just like that. Can they be resurrected? It's a pity that Avengers will have to wait until next year. Lu Ming shook his head regretfully. For a big Marvel fan like him, waiting for a year was really a painful torture. It's torture. Let's watch it again. Lu Ming stood up from his seat. Just as the curtain of the film in front of him ended, the name of the producer was pulled over, and a piece of text jumped out from the bottom. Do you want to enter the world of Marvel movies? Yes/no. Seeing the inexplicable words appearing on the screen, Lu Ming was stunned. He didn't know if it was due to the 3D special effects, but the words seemed to be detached from the screen and were floating in front of him. What the hell? Is this the second Easter egg? Lu Ming looked around in confusion. The audience had all left, and he was the only one left in the quiet, huge theater. Looking at the screen again, the text was still floating in the center, and the font color began to fade from black to white, and it was about to disappear completely. Prank? You want to scare me, the truant bully, like this? Lu Ming chuckled and stretched out his finger to click on the option. But as soon as he raised his index finger, a tingling sensation like an electric shock immediately spread from his fingertips to his whole body. Holy shit! This is mandatory? Before Lu Ming could complain, his eyes went dark and he lost consciousness and passed out. After an unknown amount of time spent unconscious, Lu Ming gradually came to himself in a dizzy state. He sat up from his single bed and looked around in confusion, and found himself in a slightly crowded wooden room. Everywhere he looked, the furniture was decorated in European and American styles. Next to his own bed were rows of single military beds of the same type. Where am I? Lu Ming was confused and doubtful. He rubbed his eyes with his hands as if he had seen it wrong, and quickly checked again with his eyes. That's right, he was lying in a military barracks room, or more precisely, on a single bed in an old-style European and American military barracks room. No way. I really traveled through time? To the Marvel movie world. Lu Ming was confused for a moment, suddenly waking up in an unfamiliar military camp in a foreign country. Thinking about the strange options before he fell into a coma, he urgently needed to verify his thoughts. He immediately unzipped his pants, pulled them open, lowered his head to check, and was the first to breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, my brother is still here. It seems that I didn't travel through time, but my soul traveled through time. Lu Ming wanted to cry, but had no tears. Although he could not see his current face, he could still judge from his white skin and other physical conditions that his soul was in the body of a foreign youth who was not much different in age from his previous life. Lu Ming sat on the single bed for a long time before he realized the cruel fact before him. However, he was an orphan fostered in a relative's home in his previous life. Coupled with the bombardment of information about new things that emerged in the 21st century, it was surprisingly easy for him to accept his inexplicable soul crossing. Just accept what has happened. If you make a fuss or cannot accept something, you are courting your own destruction. More importantly, since he is a member of the vast number of time travelers, and is from a world suspected to be Marvel where the mortality rate of ordinary people is very high, he must have gold finger. When Lu Ming thought of this, he was about to feel around to see if he had any built-in system or something. At this moment, the door of the room suddenly opened, and a thin young man with blonde hair and blue eyes walked in. Seeing Lu Ming waking up on the bed, the blonde young man was slightly stunned, then walked forward quickly with great joy. Lu Ming also reacted quickly, knowing that the person in front of him was most likely a friend of the original owner of this body he was reborn into. If he could hide it from him, he would be able to learn from him the identity of the original owner of this body, as well as information about his current environment and the current state of the world. Adapting to the body you occupy and blending into the environment is the first hurdle for a soul crosser. Lu Ming raised the corners of his mouth, making sure to show a friendly smile, but the first words that the young man said when he came forward made his smile freeze on his face. "Kyle, are you all right?" said the young man. "It's pure English." The corner of Lu Ming's mouth twitched slightly. Looking at the young man with a concerned expression, the smile just now disappeared. His lips were tightly closed, and he couldn't help but want to swear in his heart. What's going on? What happened to the promise that the entire universe would speak Chinese? Are the novels and comics all lies? In his previous life, he was just a poor student in high school. No matter how good his English was, it was impossible for him to communicate normally in English with foreigners. Not to mention that if he spoke poor English at that moment, he would most likely expose himself. Now, he couldn't understand a word of what the other party was saying. Seeing Lu Ming's face turn pale, the worry on the young man's face increased, and he mumbled a series of English greetings. Lu Ming forced out an ugly smile, his clenched fists filled with cold sweat. He never thought that language barriers would lead to such a predicament. Just when he was about to give it a try and give a random answer, a few translucent white cards jumped out from the back of the young man's head, floating and rotating with the other person's body as the center. The young man seemed not to notice the cards surrounding him, and was still worriedly asking about something. For white cards, as if encountering a ray of light like a savior, Lu Ming's attention immediately shifted to the cards on the other party. American soldier training uniform set bicycle driving street fighting techniques, basic English proficiency. Except for the first card, which has an annotation of item card. It is in an unavailable state. The other three ability cards are all available for extraction. Without thinking, Lu Ming ignored the rest of the cards and focused on the last, basic English proficiency ability card. Basic English. You can master general English speaking and writing skills. White ability card. Current status, extractable. Do you want to extract? Chapter 2 card drawing ability cards. Can they be drawn? Is this my gold finger as a soul traveler? Lu Ming did not investigate further and immediately extracted the basic English proficiency from the young man. In fact, it was just a thought in my mind. After 3 seconds of extraction, the words of the young man beside the bed reached my ears. "Are you really okay? You look very bad. Do you want to go to the military doctor's office for another checkup?" I'm fine. I just didn't wake up yet." Lu Ming tried to reply. His English sounded like his mother tongue, and he spoke it fluently with a local accent. "I'm glad you're okay." The young man breathed a sigh of relief, handed over the cup of water and medicine in his hand, and said with a smile, "You should take the medicine first." Lu Ming nodded, swallowed the pill, drank a few sips of water, and breathed a sigh of relief. I feel alive again. By the way, I'm still a little dizzy now. I want to confirm with you, where am I?" Seeing Lu Ming's serious expression, the young man was stunned for a moment, and then quickly laughed and scolded as a joke. "Kyle, you're not dizzy, are you? This is a U.S. military training base." "Kyle military training base?" Lu Ming pondered. He knew that his original body's name was Kyle, so he tacitly accepted Kyle as his new name. From now on, there is no Lu Ming. There is only a brand new Kyle. After all, no matter how cruel reality is, life must go on. The young man continued, "Yes, at the training base. We were new recruits and had only been here for one day. Maybe the weather was too hot, and you fainted from heat stroke during the high-intensity running training." Heat stroke. It seems that the body's physical condition is not very good. Kyle secretly complained, as if he suddenly remembered something, and quickly put his hands on the thin shoulders of the young man and asked hurriedly, "By the way, let me ask you another question. Have you heard of the Avengers? This is very important. Tell me quickly." The most urgent task is to confirm whether this is the Marvel world. Kyle, stop shaking so hard. The young man rolled his eyes. His thin and malnourished body seemed to be almost broken apart. After Kyle stopped, he took a breath and replied, "I really don't know what alliance you were talking about. What is that? Don't you know him?" Kyle frowned, then quickly seemed to remember something and asked with wide eyes, "Wait, what time is it now? I'm asking for the year, month, and day." "Kyle, you didn't really hit your head, did you?" the young man said in surprise. "Tell me now." "It's September 1943. 1943, it's actually the period of World War II. Kyle fell silent. Even in the Marvel world, the Avengers did not exist during World War II. Oh, and there is an iconic character. One last question. Kyle took a deep breath and asked anxiously, "Is there a man named Steve in the training camp here?" "Steve?" The young man's expression became strange. "Yes, Steve Rogers." Kyle quickly confirmed that the Avengers' earliest hero appeared during World War II in the Marvel world. Captain America, he should also be Marvel's earliest superhero. "Kyle, what are you talking about? We both know that person." The young man blinked, and under Kyle's puzzled gaze, he pointed at his nose and said with a smile, "I am Steve Rogers." Hearing this, Kyle opened his eyes wide in shock and looked at the young man in front of him from head to toe again. Compared to a normal young man, he has a thin and petite figure, simple blonde hair, and a face that looks weak but upright. No wonder it feels familiar. Isn't this Captain America himself, before he was injected with the super soldier potion? Since he is here, this is indeed the Marvel world. Kyle was in no mood to pay attention to the real-life idol in front of him. He didn't know whether he was happy or scared. He was excited at the thought of being able to come into contact with the high-tech superheroes that lived in the movies. But when I think of the powerful villains in the Marvel world, I get a headache. But this is Marvel during World War II. It's hard to say whether I'll have the chance to live to the 21st century. It's too early to worry about Thanos' snap. Besides, Captain America himself is right next to him. So how can this be considered a thigh? A mosquito leg is still a leg. When Kyle thought of this, the look in his eyes when he looked at Steve changed, which made Steve shudder, and he subconsciously took a half step back. "All right." Steve seemed to have remembered something important and said worriedly, "Captain Brandt asked me to inform you that when you wake up, you can go see him." "Oh, the officer who trains the new recruits?" Kyle nodded. Having seen the movie Captain America, he had some impression of the role of the training officer. "I remember that before Steve became Captain America, he was always targeted by his superiors and teammates because of his frail body. Maybe it was the original owner of his body that caused him trouble. As a new recruit, he fainted from heat stroke on the first day of training, which probably gave his superiors a very bad impression." Kyle thought for a moment and said calmly, "I don't quite remember how to get to the commander's office. Please take me there." "Okay, come with me." Steve nodded. Steve took Kyle out of the barracks dormitory, and the two walked along the internal road of the base. The sunlight was glaring outside the door. On the training ground of the huge base, teams of young soldiers wearing only white short-sleeved shirts and with bare arms were running under slogans. "Hey, look, that's Kyle and Steve. He got heat stroke on the first day of training. What a pretty boy." A pretty boy and a skinny boy. These two are a perfect match. A group of new recruits ran past the two men blowing whistles. They were obviously training teammates living in the same dormitory. "Kyle, you don't have to pay attention to them." Steve turned around to comfort him, but saw that there was no resentment on Kyle's face, but instead a faint smile. Of course, Kyle ignored those new recruits. For him, who had the Goldfinger card, only Steve, who would soon become Captain America, was qualified to be his comrade in arms. On the way to the commander's office, Kyle kept testing his card-drawing ability. Soon he came to some conclusions. First of all, He can obtain the card information of anyone who is within 3 meters of his body. The classification is currently simply divided into item cards and ability cards. Item cards cannot be extracted, but ability cards can be copied and extracted freely. Ability cards refer to a person's skills and abilities. Commonly used skills, such as English basics and car driving, are all white cards. Those who have reached a certain level of professional proficiency, such as proficiency in English or pistols, become green cards. Green ability cards can also be drawn, but it takes longer than white ones. Kyle was still trying to figure out how to draw the ability cards when Steve suddenly patted his shoulder as a reminder and led him to a room. Report to the commander. Soldier Steve, I brought Kyle here. Private Kyle reporting in. Kyle followed Steve, and the two stood at the door of the office and saluted in a standard military posture. Come in. With a majestic and calm voice, the two walked into the office side by side. The inside was also simple and tidy in the style of a military camp, with an office desk in the middle. A middle-aged man in an officer's uniform was sitting in the office chair. He seemed to be Chief Brandt. In addition, there was a female agent wearing a small wrapped skirt military uniform and holding a record document standing next to the desk. Soldier, how are you? Commander Brandt looked at Kyle coldly. Kyle immediately replied, Sir, I am fully recovered and can continue training immediately. Officer Brandt frowned and said calmly, There's no need for training. You can go back and pack your things. Someone will take you home tomorrow morning. Steve's face changed slightly. This sentence was undoubtedly a death sentence for Kyle's career as a soldier. The female agent said nothing, but lowered her head and wrote something on the document. Only Kyle, the person involved, looked calm, as if he was not the one being talked about, and said calmly, Sir, I insist on staying and continuing my training as a soldier. Commander Brandt snorted coldly. Training? What's the point of training? He fainted from heat stroke on the first day. His willpower is so poor. He is a disgrace to our American military. Tell me, what qualifications and abilities do you have as a soldier defending your country? At this point, Commander Brandt glanced at Steve, obviously scolding him as well. Facing the doubt, Kyle took a deep breath, took a step forward, and confidently replied, Give me a chance. I will show my ability and qualifications to the superior. With just one step, Kyle was within 3 meters of Commander Brandt. With his mind focused, more than 30 white and green cards appeared in his field of vision. Wow, he is indeed a commander who trains new soldiers. He has 9 green cards alone. Pistol proficiency, rifle proficiency, military auxiliary equipment proficiency, military boxing and fighting proficiency, training and coaching soldiers proficiency. You are so arrogant. Tell me, how do you want to show it? Commander Brandt sneered. If a talented person says this, it can be understood that he is confident, but if he does not have talent, it is conceited. What kind of talent does a recruit who fainted from heat stroke while running on the first day of training have? The female agent next to the desk also shook her head secretly. Her impression of Kyle was getting worse. Although the soldier in front of her could be ranked in the top 3 in the entire training camp in terms of appearance, his willpower and self-awareness were not even comparable to Steve's. If you don't believe me, sir, why don't you compete with me as soldier? After looking at the card of Commander Brandt, Kyle felt more confident and said calmly, If I win, I will continue to stay in the barracks. If I lose, don't bother to expel me, sir. I will pack my bags and leave on my own. Competition? Just you? You don't want to play cards or flip coins or something. Officer Brandt looked at him as if he was an idiot. Of course not. I want to compete with Captain Brandt on my ability as a soldier. Kyle said after taking a deep breath. That's enough. Soldier, don't be so presumptuous. Officer Brandt slammed the table and stood up, saying angrily, What qualifications do you have to compete with me? You are humiliating the officers. I can file a complaint against you in the military court. Kyle knew he had no way out, so he could only insist. Of course, I didn't mean to insult the commander. I was serious and wanted to take this opportunity to show off my abilities as a soldier. You. Officer Brandt was about to say something when the female agent next to him interrupted and asked, Soldier, what do you want to compete with Officer Brandt? Just compare shooting skills. Any gun will do. Kyle answered firmly. The female agent stared at Kyle with her beautiful eyes as if she wanted to find something from his face. Finally, she said, "I think we can give him a chance," and returned to her original silence. "You want to compete with me in shooting skills? I wonder if you were too confident or you were giving up on yourself." Officer Brandt sneered, sat back in his chair in silence, and said, "Then I will make you go home convinced. At 5 p.m., at the shooting range, we will compete with the 50-meter rifle target." Okay. Kyle secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Everything was as expected. His attention was now focused on the female agent. Since she could interrupt the commander, this female agent seemed to be of high status. See if she has any ability cards that can be used next. Kyle did what he wanted to do, and his thoughts immediately fell on the female agent. The next moment, he was almost stunned. More than 70 ability cards, far more than the 30 or so that her superior had, appeared on the female agent's body. The white and green cards intersected together, almost covering up her entire mature and slender body. Mastery of psychology, mastery of medical rescue, mastery of Morse code, mastery of assassination, mastery of true rifle, mastery of etiquette. There are no less than 20 green ability cards alone, and among them, there is a card that is even darker green than the ordinary green card. Dazzling. Since this is a bet, can we let this agent witness it? It would be best if there is paper proof, Kyle suggested with a smile. He certainly wasn't trying to strike up a conversation at this juncture. It takes 3 minutes to draw a green ability card, and the distance to draw must be within 1 meter to be effective. However, his confident look silenced everyone in the office, including Steve. Chapter 3. Gunfight on the first day of camp. New recruits challenged their officers' shooting skills. This news was like throwing a high-explosive grenade into a pool of water, shaking the entire training base and causing huge waves. Moreover, the recruit fainted from heat stroke while running, and the officer was a professional training officer at the captain level. The contrast caused an earthquake-like sensation in the base. Both the soldiers and the other officers were stunned when they heard about the competition, and then they couldn't help but feel sorry for the soldier. Why offend Commander Brandt? I heard that he once won the top 3 in the military shooting competition. Isn't that new soldier crazy? You've given up on yourself. You're going to be embarrassed at home. No matter what, this was something that the gossipers would love to see and hear. At nearly 5 o'clock, almost everyone in the entire training base headed towards the shooting range, hoping to catch a glimpse of the ugly appearance of the soldier named Kyle. "Kyle, you're too impulsive." Steve sighed repeatedly. "You rarely use your gun. How can your shooting skills compare to those of your officers who have been in the Army for a long time? If you go back and apologize to Officer Brandt now, maybe you can—" "Don't worry, after this competition, no one here will look down on us anymore." Kyle was calm and composed, not showing even a hint of nervousness, because he had already drawn the ability card that could determine the victory of this game. Training base, Wilderness Shooting Range. The spectator platform at the shooting range was already densely packed with soldiers in green uniforms and iron helmets, and many officers in military uniforms were also there to watch the fun. Officer Brandt went to his position first to test the gun, while the female agent still held the file notebook beside her. After seeing Steve and Kyle enter, Officer Brandt waved his arm towards the various weapons on the table. "Here are all the rifles used by the U.S. military. Pick one for yourself." Kyle nodded, but did not walk towards the table. Instead, he approached the female agent and said with a smile, "I wonder what kind of gun Agent Carter uses? Can you lend it to me for a while?" Agent Carter raised his head. In the bright sunshine, the delicate faces, red lips, and fair skin of Europeans and Americans exuded full charm. It was only after leaving the chief's office that Kyle learned from Steve the name of the female agent in front of him. Carter, who was even more beautiful than she appeared in the movie. "Of course, but are you sure you want to use it in the competition?" Agent Carter said coldly as she took out the gun she carried with her. It was a black, exquisite special pistol. "Soldier, are you kidding me? You want to compare your pistol with my rifle?" Officer Brandt next to him showed anger on his face. "Even if it's just a 50-meter target, how does a pistol compare to a rifle in terms of accuracy? Please lend it to me." Kyle took the special pistol from Carter with certainty. The exquisite pistol seemed to be tailor-made for women. Its handicraft-like texture far exceeded the craftsmanship level of the rifles on the table. The pistol body flashed a cold light in the sun. It was undoubtedly a hot weapon that could kill people. "Nice gun," Kyle praised and began to swing the pistol in his hand. "3 shots will decide the outcome. There's no need to waste the National Army's bullets on you," Officer Brandt said as he pulled the safety of his rifle and walked onto the shooting platform. "3 shots, then." "Sir, please shoot first," Kyle said with a smile and made a gentlemanly gesture of invitation. "You young man who lives in a greenhouse, let me show you what marksmanship is." Officer Brandt moved quickly, lowering the gun, and after a few seconds of aiming, he fired 3 shots at the target 50 meters away. After finishing the shooting, he stood up with satisfaction. Shooting at a 50-meter target with a rifle was already the basics, and with more than 20 years of shooting experience in the Army, it was not difficult at all. Soon, the trainer reported back the target shooting results. "Captain Brandt, 50-meter target, 2 shots hit the bullseye, 1 shot inside the bullseye, a total of 29 points. 29 points, almost full marks." The soldiers watching at the shooting range exclaimed. Officer Brandt was satisfied, but his expression remained serious. He shook his head and said, "You are not in good condition, otherwise 30 points would be easy. As expected, you are an expert with rifles." Kyle shrugged and walked towards the shooting table. He lived in a peaceful era in his previous life and had never practiced with a pistol, let alone touched one. But at this time, holding the card related to the pistol mastery skills, with the pistol in hand, an unprecedented sense of familiarity arises spontaneously. Looking at the target in the distance, Kyle's movements were not smooth, but he still raised his arm, aimed and fired in less than half a second, 3 times in a row. "You're pretending pretty well." Officer Brandt shook his head. 50 meters is already a long distance for a pistol, and it's much more difficult to hit a target than with a rifle. If you want to win, you can only hit the bullseye with 3 shots, and the probability of this happening to a rookie is almost 0. Sure enough, the trainer checked the 50-meter target for a long time before reporting loudly, "Soldier Kyle. 50-meter target, 3 shots missed, score 0. There was silence at the shooting range, and then the audience burst into laughter. Officer Brandt was also stunned. He had thought Kyle was so confident that even if he couldn't beat him, he would at least hit the target. He didn't expect that all 3 shots missed. What a farce! What a farce! "Kyle, pack up and get out of here." Officer Brandt shook his head mockingly. But Kyle, who was still standing on the shooting platform, suddenly shouted, "Trainer, please check the 100-meter target." "A 100-meter target? What else do you want to do? Isn't it enough to joke around?" Officer Brandt couldn't help it anymore. He stepped forward with a rifle in his hand. His face turned ashen with anger. The muzzle of the gun almost pointed directly at Kyle's head. "Believe it or not, I can shoot you with 1 shot," Kyle said calmly. "Before you kill me, can you wait for the trainer to report the 100-meter target result?" "Are you crazy? Do you really want me to kill you?" Commander Brandt said angrily. At this moment, the trainer's hurried report sounded 100 meters away. "Report, Soldier Kyle, 3 shots at the 100-meter target, all hit the bullseye. 30 points. 100-meter target, 3 shots, all hit the target." The shooting range, which was originally filled with laughter, fell silent again. The soldiers and even the officers outside the field were all stunned. Commander Brandt showed an expression of incredible astonishment and asked the trainer again. Only after the trainer confirmed that it was correct did he put down the rifle in a daze. "In this way, I win the competition. Sir, I will continue to stay in the base for training." Kyle also secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He almost had a gun pointed at his head. This feeling was no joke. However, in the end, he won. It was a near miss. That's enough. Without waiting for Officer Brandt's response, Kyle left the shooting range, walked towards Agent Carter, and returned the special pistol to her. Carter looked at him in amazement and said with emotion, "I didn't expect that you could do this with a pistol. With the range of this special pistol, you can do the same." Kyle responded with a smile. "How do you know?" Carter couldn't help asking. "I guessed it. But today, you are my goddess of victory. I will thank you next time I have the chance." After Kyle finished speaking, he turned around and left the shooting range, leaving Carter standing there in confusion and Commander Brandt in a trance. Outside the shooting range, when Steve saw Kyle coming out, he ran over and gave him a hug. "Kyle, you scared me to death. Please don't be so gay. I'm straight." Kyle said this, but actually put his hands on Steve's thin shoulders after the hug. I didn't expect you to be such a great shooter. Please teach me well in the future, Steve said happily. Of course, let's go eat. The two of them walked towards the cafeteria with their arms around each other's shoulders. As they watched them leave, someone in the audience seats at the shooting range took the lead, and soon thunderous applause broke out. The new recruits in the same dormitory, who had been sarcastic and mocking him, also lowered their heads in shame. Pistol 100-meter target versus rifle 50-meter target. A complete win. Such a sharpshooter's shooting ability deserves applause and respect from everyone in the barracks. The food in the army is nutritious, but the taste is still not that good. After finishing his meal, Kyle returned to the barracks dormitory to rest. After this shocking bet, the attitudes of the new recruits in the same dormitory changed 180 degrees. In Steve's words, those who used to ignore them now come to them and ask for friendship, and those who used to bully and tease them now behave themselves. This is the deterrence of strength and talent. After enjoying the convenience and benefits of drawing cards, Kyle fell even more in love with the feeling of constantly enriching and strengthening himself. There were nearly 20 people in a dormitory. He was like a dry sponge, constantly extracting various card abilities from the surrounding area, accepting all of them. However, these soldiers are all young recruits, and even if they have cards, most of them are limited to white cards, and there are very few green cards. Among the green cards, there are very few that have practical value. Agent Carter is still the best. When will all the more than 20 green cards be drawn? Kyle finished collecting and was leaning on the bed thinking. Suddenly, Steve leaned on the bed and asked curiously, Kyle, what are you thinking about? Kyle, who was still daydreaming, blurted out, thinking about Agent Carter. Ah, Agent Carter. Steve's face froze when he heard the name. You like Agent Carter, right? Kyle laughed secretly and comforted him. Don't worry, I won't steal the woman you like. You really are. Steve's face was touched, but he quickly lost it. I'd better forget it. A woman like her is not worthy of me. Don't underestimate yourself, Steve. You have to believe in your talent and future. Kyle patted Steve on the shoulder and encouraged him like chicken soup. If you want to pursue that woman, keep your will and drive and tap into your potential. I don't want to be on the battlefield in the future without you by my side. After all, you're Captain America. In Marvel's World War II period, you are definitely the protagonist. Thank you, Kyle. Steve nodded vigorously and stepped back from the bed. Just work hard and become stronger. Although I have the ability to draw cards, so I will always be ahead of you. Kyle watched Steve leave, and his thoughts returned to his collection of ability cards. Apart from the more than 100 white ability cards covering various fields, he currently only has 5 green cards. Rifle Mastery, English Proficiency, Military Boxing, Fighting Mastery, Mastering Psychology, True Pistol Mastery. Among them, True Pistol Mastery is far more dazzling than the other 4 green cards. True Pistol Mastery. Master nearly perfect pistol skills. A rare green ability card. This is the most valuable ability card Kyle extracted from Carter. With this rare card, he can easily defeat the officer who is proficient in rifles. Otherwise, Kyle and his superior would have a 50-50 chance of winning the same rifle. Green rare cards, green cards, white cards. Green ability cards are harder to come by than white cards, and the requirements for both the distance and time required to draw them are much higher. I don't need to go to the battlefield yet, so the rest of the green cards are of little use. Right now, what I need most is a green ability card that can enhance my physical fitness. Kyle thought to himself that his physical condition was weak, otherwise he would not have collapsed from heat stroke on the first day. In order to adapt to the high-intensity training in the military camp, one must change one's physical condition. Directly extracting other people's abilities related to physical fitness, such as the green card, Military Boxing and Fighting Mastery, the white card, Running Specialty, and the white card, Swimming Specialty, can improve one's own physical fitness in disguised form. Unfortunately, the increase given by the white ability card is not significant. Only the green ability card gives a significant increase in physical fitness. Tomorrow, continue to look for ability cards. Focus on green ability cards related to physical fitness. Kyle's eyes sparkled. All the talents in the entire military training base were his targets. Chapter 4. There is a monster among the new soldiers early the next morning. After breakfast and some morning weight training, the recruits put on their neat military uniforms and assembled in the square. However, the training officer was not the usual Chief Brant, but another strong and tall middle-aged officer. He was a white man with tan skin, a muscular body with a strong waist and tiger back, and a murderous aura. Captain Brant is on leave today, so let me take over and lead you in combat training. My name is Joseph Kingsley. You can just call me Instructor Joseph. The substitute instructor said loudly. Got it, the recruits responded in unison. By the way, that new soldier who stood out yesterday is in your team, right? Instructor Joseph asked with some interest. Now all the new recruits looked at Kyle in the second row, while Steve looked at his gay friend a little nervously. Soldier Kyle, step out. Instructor Joseph spoke, and Kyle marched out of the team in military steps. You're quite handsome. Your pistol shooting yesterday was indeed a sharpshooter. Instructor Joseph was praising her when he suddenly changed the subject, but being a sharpshooter is far from being an excellent American soldier. If the enemy gets close to you, they can knock you down in less than one round. It seems that he is here to suppress my arrogance. Kyle complained secretly, but asked humbly, I wonder if Instructor Joseph can let me see it in person. A naked provocation. The recruits behind Kyle felt their scalps tingling. Instructor Joseph's verbal teaching was paused, and he was secretly angry. No wonder Commander Brant was so angry that he had to take a rest. This new recruit was too annoying. Instructor Joseph smiled instead of getting angry and said cheerfully, Very good, then I will show you what close combat is. What if I accidentally hurt you, Instructor? Kyle asked worriedly. I allow you to fight back freely. This is an order. Instructor Joseph waved his hand, signaling Kyle to take action first. Then I won't be polite to you, soldier. As soon as the words fell, Kyle had already moved. He was within a few steps of the fighting range in a breath. He clenched his fists and used the military boxing fighting skills in a crisp and clear manner. Military boxing fighting mastery. Master practical military boxing techniques, focusing on close combat methods of boxing. Green ability card. An expert can tell whether a player is strong or weak with just one move. Instructor Joseph did not expect that Kyle had mastered the military boxing fighting style perfectly. He could only make a hasty and temporary defense, and ended up being suppressed and beaten. Kyle doesn't care what your military rank is, and he doesn't do anything fancy. He just uses a set of military boxing fighting techniques smoothly to the end, using Instructor Joseph as a sandbag for sparring. How embarrassing! Joseph's face changed slightly, and he felt that the eyes of the recruits on the field had changed. Since he was also proficient in military boxing fighting skills, he basically parried all of Kyle's punches, but on the surface it seemed that Kyle was suppressing him. Have you had enough? You can't fight me if you only learn military boxing. Joseph changed his moves and began to suppress Kyle with his hands and feet fighting skills. It's something, Kyle panted, trying to resist the opponent's attack while paying attention to Instructor Joseph's ability card. Military boxing fighting mastery, endurance fighting mastery, counterattack fighting mastery, true fitness. There are 4 green cards in the physical training category alone, and one of them is a rare green card. No wonder you were able to counterattack me so quickly after falling into a disadvantage. Kyle's eyes lit up, and he began to draw cards from the instructor's body. To extract a green ability card, you need to be within 1 meter of the target and read it continuously for 3 minutes. This is the real reason why Kyle wants to fight with the instructor. There is no better reason to get close than sparring. Kyle was at a disadvantage, but he was still fighting tenaciously. Joseph was unable to knock him down for a while and wanted to stop. However, as soon as he relaxed, Kyle started to fight him again with military boxing skills. Soldier, do you really want me to hurt you? Instructor Joseph gnashed his teeth, but Kyle seemed to be getting more and more excited as the fight went on, and he just kept pestering you to keep fighting. After 3 minutes, counter-combat mastery was successfully extracted. Kyle felt Nuanuan's power flowing through his body, enhancing his physical fitness. At the same time, he mastered the techniques of counterattack fighting as if he had practiced for more than 10 years. Get down! Instructor Joseph increased the force of his punch and was about to knock Kyle to the ground, but Kyle suddenly wrapped his hands around his arms and began to fight back. Counterattack fighting. Military boxing fighting. Kyle, who had gained the card's ability enhancement, continued to narrow the gap between himself and the instructor, allowing the battle game, which was about to end, to last longer. Instructor Joseph and Kyle fought back and forth in the dust, and for a while neither of them could defeat the other. Experts fighting, the recruits standing nearby were stunned. The continued fierce close combat also attracted more troops from other places in the training square, and they soon surrounded the two men in 3 circles. What happened over there? Agent Carter, who was passing by, saw this scene and asked the officer who was rushing over there in confusion. The officer spread his hands and replied helplessly. A new soldier was practicing close combat with Joseph. Joseph? Carter opened his sexy lips slightly in surprise. Yes, Joseph, a professional combat training instructor. The officer smiled bitterly. I don't know how that recruit managed to hold out for nearly 10 minutes under Joseph's command. What's the new recruit's name? Carter opened the document in his hand. Kyle. Soldier Kyle. The card was successfully drawn. True fitness. Maintaining a strong and superior physique will make you healthier than ordinary people and improve your endurance and physical strength. A rare green ability card. It worked. Kyle was breathing heavily, his uniform soaked with sweat. He got the last physical ability card, and although the power to improve his physical fitness was obviously flowing into his body, the soreness and fatigue were already deeply imprinted on his body. He kicked his legs forward and jumped back as if to escape from the battle. Instructor Joseph continued to chase him forward with a roar. Kyle suddenly raised his hands. All right, I have no strength left. I surrender. Instructor Joseph was also panting. At the last moment, he stopped his fist in front of Kyle's nose and said with his beard erect, Why? You can't do it anymore? As expected of you, instructor. You are better in strength, speed, and fighting skills. Soldier, I surrender. If you hadn't kept letting me win, I would have lost my arms and legs long ago. Kyle sat down on the ground, not forgetting to flatter him. You brat. Instructor Joseph cursed, and then sat on the ground tiredly without caring how many people were watching. I did let you go at the beginning, but later I fought seriously. I have to say, soldier, your fighting talent is the best I've seen in my 20 years of military service. It is absolutely a monster level. During the more than 10 minutes of fighting, Instructor Joseph felt that Kyle was learning from him and his close combat skills were improving rapidly. How could he not be surprised? That was great. Let's practice together again when we have time. Instructor Joseph said with a smile. He really liked the soldiers who could master fighting skills so quickly. No problem. Kyle nodded without showing any weakness. Instructor Joseph had several other green ability cards on him, in addition to the 3 physical cards he had just drawn. You soldiers. Instructor Joseph raised his eyebrows and looked around, then shouted, What are you looking at? Don't you want to train? You want to fight me one-on-one, right? We are not monsters like Kyle. The recruits who were watching didn't dare to respond and just scattered like a beehive of fire. Chapter 5 Super Soldier Project in the basement office of the top person in charge of the training base. Kyle Dahl's profile. Male, age 22, height 178 centimeters, weight 68 kilograms. Born in 1921. His hometown is 199 Highland Street, Brooklyn, New York, USA. Current family status, single. Both parents were American soldiers who died gloriously in the Secret War in 1935 and were declared martyrs. He passed the physical examination at the World Expo this year and became one of the new recruits selected as super soldiers and entered the base for training. On the first day of recruit training, Kyle competed with Officer Brand in shooting and won perfectly with his superb pistol shooting skills. On the second day of recruit training, he practiced close combat with Officer Joseph, but was defeated due to exhaustion. But 3 days later, the two faced off again, and Kyle emerged victorious. On the third day of recruit training, Agent Carter suggests him as a top choice for Super Soldier. Commander Brandt suggested that he be selected as the first choice Super Soldier. Commander Joseph suggested that he be the first choice as a Super Soldier. At the bottom of Kyle's file, there are signatures of the 3 people in charge of the selection and assessment of the Super Soldier program. I didn't expect that in the 6th day of the originally scheduled 1-week review and selection period, More than 3 persons in charge jointly recommended a soldier. The tall and majestic middle-aged man put down the file in his hand. The general's uniform and 4-star military rank on his body showed his extraordinary status. To be honest, I still don't like that soldier, Kyle. Officer Brandt pursed his lips and sighed. But I have to admit that he does have all the talents and abilities of a soldier. Commander Joseph nodded in agreement and said with emotion, "Yes. After only 5 or 6 days of training, he has the qualities that are not inferior to the top Special Forces soldiers." General Chester, if you hadn't reminded me that the super soldier potion has not yet been tested in the final stage, I would have thought that Kyle was a super soldier born from a secret experiment. If the super soldier potion can be effective on him, then he may be the most versatile and perfect soldier in the history of the United States. Agent Carter gave his own judgment coldly. "Correct it, not just America, but the whole world," Commander Joseph said affirmatively. After the 3 people in the basement office finished speaking, General Chester's eyes fell on an old doctor wearing glasses and asked, "Dr. Abraham Erskine, what do you think? After all, it was you who researched and created the super soldier potion, and you should have also reviewed the candidates for the first trial soldiers." Soldier Kyle is indeed very good in terms of both physical and mental abilities. Dr. Abraham responded slowly, but finally made up his mind and said what he was thinking. "But I think Soldier Steve is more suitable. His will and justice are both necessary for a perfect soldier." Steve was his favorite candidate for the super soldier, but Kyle, who suddenly appeared, was too outstanding. His excellence almost overshadowed all the new recruits in the training base. 3-1? General Chester tapped the table with his fingers and asked the last man in the office, "Howard Stark, as the head of scientific strategy for the Super Soldier Project, do you have anything to say?" Howard, dressed in a suit and looking like a gentleman, shrugged and said with a smile, "I am only responsible for the scientific strategy project. It is your job to select soldiers. I have no opinion on who you choose." General Chester thought for a moment and said, "Let's have someone contact Soldier Kyle first. Let him learn about the Super Soldier Project and see what he thinks and what he wants to do." "I'll go." Carter, who was always silent, suddenly took over the conversation. "Okay, then you go ahead." General Chester nodded and said seriously, "Tomorrow, prepare for the final experiment of the super soldier." Inside the military dormitory for new recruits, Kyle had just finished a shower. His blonde hair was still dripping with water. He was wearing only a pair of shorts and standing in front of the mirror with his upper body naked. His facial features were as delicate as if they were carved by a knife or an axe. He looked sunny and handsome, and most importantly, he had a strong and upright physique, with abdominal muscles that looked like they were made of steel. A body blessed with more than 10 green ability cards of physical fitness and skills. Is this the result? Kyle looked at the strong body that looked like a work of art in the mirror with great satisfaction. He was very sure that at this moment his strength, speed, and physical fitness were better than those special forces who had been fighting for a long time. Moreover, he had not had a moment's rest in the past few days. Except for the physical ability cards, he also drew the other white and green ability cards without error. There are now 36 green ability cards for various professional talents, and an astonishing number of over 400 white ability cards. What ordinary people call genius and omnipotence is nothing more than this. It's been nearly a week since my rebirth. According to the progress of the Captain America movie, the super soldier experiment should have begun. Kyle was thinking about this when he heard a click and the dormitory door was opened. "Steve!" Kyle walked out of the bathroom in confusion. When he saw the beautiful woman walking into the dormitory, his expression became surprised. "Agent Carter, you must have gone to the wrong place. This is the recruit dormitory." That's right. The person who walked into the dormitory was Agent Carter. Her usual small wrap, skirt, military uniform outlined her mature body thrillingly. She held the document in one hand and stopped in the dormitory hall with clean and neat steps. "You're right. I came here just to find you." Carter frowned slightly and asked coldly, "Shouldn't this be the time for collective training for new recruits? Why are you taking a shower in the dormitory?" This is just a small privilege for me to break the single soldier record at the training base." Kyle smiled and did not rush to put on his shirt. He just put a bath towel on his shoulders to cover his important parts. "I don't have anything good to offer you, Agent Carter, so please be humble and find a place to sit down." Carter remained cool and calm, looked around the dormitory, and found that there were no chairs or anything, so he finally chose to sit next to a bed. "Tell me, what do you want from a new recruit like me?" Kyle didn't hesitate to wipe his wet hair with a towel and sat down on the other side of the bed. The single bed placed less than a meter between them. "Why are you sitting so close?" Carter looked at him coldly, but Kyle shrugged and said, "This is my bed. It's normal for me to sit on my own bed." "Carter, I didn't expect that. I just chose it randomly, but ended up sitting on Kyle's bed by mistake." Kyle kept smiling. There was a reason why he sat so close to Carter. Carter still had nearly 10 green ability cards on him that he did not have. Chatting with a beautiful woman next to me and drawing cards at will is much more enjoyable than the past few days. "Then I'll be frank with you. How much do you know about super soldiers?" Carter asked, his legs pressed together. "Super soldier?" Kyle showed a surprised expression on his face and answered, "I only know that our group of new soldiers were originally selected for the Super Soldier Project. I don't know much about the rest. Let me explain it to you. The Super Soldier Project was developed by Dr. Abraham. It involves injecting a serum into the human body to stimulate cell vitality and transform the human body from the inside out. In theory, it can at least improve a person's physical fitness by 3 times. It can cultivate a super individual combat power far beyond that of ordinary soldiers." Carter explained, "The training officer should have told you recruits a long time ago that the first person to participate in the super soldier experiment will be selected this week." "I know." Kyle nodded, but seemed a little absent-minded. He smiled and said, "So you chose me?" "I haven't made a final decision yet. I just came to ask for your opinion first." Carter said, his eyes swept across Kyle's exposed assembly line abdominal muscles, and quickly looked away. "Super soldier experiment?" Kyle muttered, his chin resting on his hand as he thought. In the movie, Steve is the first person chosen to be the pioneer of the super soldier experiment, and then he obtains the most perfect physique of mankind and becomes Captain America. And the super soldier potion was snatched away by Hydra spies at the moment Steve succeeded. Eventually, the serum was destroyed, the doctor was killed, and super soldiers could no longer be replicated. Now, due to his outstanding performance, can he replace Steve and become the first person in the super soldier experiment? Kyle narrowed his eyes, looked at Agent Carter nearby, and said with a decisive smile, "Sorry, I have to refuse the qualification of pioneer in the super soldier program." Chapter 6. Heading to the front. Reject? Actually reject it? Hearing Kyle's straightforward answer, Carter was stunned. His usually calm and composed face showed a look of doubt and uncertainty. "Why?" "This is what all the new recruits in the training base dream of." Kyle smiled, slowly extended a finger, and said in a relaxed tone, "First of all, this is an experiment after all. I can't ignore the possibility of failure, even though the probability of failure is very low. I believe in myself. Even without the super soldier potion, I can become the best and most outstanding soldier." Kyle extended his second finger meaningfully. "Second, this is also the most important point." "What is it?" Carter asked doubtfully, feeling such strong curiosity for the first time. "Although I have refused the qualification to be the first super soldier experiment, I can recommend someone, Steve. He has the potential that is not inferior to mine. I hope you can consider him carefully." Kyle finally said this. Coming out of the barracks dormitory, Carter was still in a trance. In her opinion, it was Kyle who gave up the chance to become the first super soldier to Steve. She didn't know whether to say it was stupid or loyal. But in this way, the candidates for tomorrow's super soldiers have basically been decided. Carter sighed. Since Kyle, the first seed, gave up on his own, the next choice was Steve, the second seed. In the military camp dormitory, Kyle was still checking the green ability card he had extracted from Carter when suddenly the door opened and a thin figure rushed in. "Steve, why are you in such a hurry?" Kyle knew it was Steve who came back without even looking up. "Kyle, why?" Steve ran to the bed excitedly and asked loudly with a puzzled look on his face, "Why did you give me the qualification of super soldier?" "Oh, you knew it so soon?" "Dr. Abraham came to me and told me." "Then you will leave the dormitory and go to the secret laboratory tomorrow." Kyle smiled as if he had guessed it. "Isn't that good? For you, this is a chance to reach the sky in one step. If you can become a super soldier, your life will be turned upside down. For me, it's certainly a dream come true, but you also need this opportunity, Steve said with difficulty. If you must ask why, I can only say that this opportunity is more important to you. Kyle answered softly. He made this choice after careful consideration. As long as he has the card drawing ability in hand, he can quickly draw other people's abilities without any risk. There is no need to risk his life by conducting the super soldier experiment. Although Steve succeeded as the protagonist in the Captain America movie, it does not necessarily guarantee that the super soldier serum is perfect. Even if successful, there is a certain chance that you will turn into a Red Skull. And without Captain America, the Marvel main storyline would likely be messed up, which is something Kyle doesn't want to see. If you want to thank me, then work hard to complete the super soldier experiment for me, and don't let me down. Kyle smiled and patted Steve's shoulder sincerely. Brother, go and work hard to become stronger, and then come back and let me draw the cards. Just think of it as a profitable investment. It's just like making money out of nothing. Kyle, you're so nice to me. Steve, who didn't know the truth, had tears in his eyes, which made Kyle feel nauseous, and he almost kicked him off the bed. The next morning, Steve packed up and secretly left the training base. No one among the recruits knew what he was going to do. Only Kyle knew that the Super Soldier Project had officially been launched in an underground base somewhere. Another day passed. Commander Brandt gathered all the freshmen at the training base and announced the end of the Super Soldier program, which caused an uproar among the recruits. Kyle knew that everything was going according to the normal track of Marvel history, and the first artificial superhero in Marvel history, Captain America, had been quietly born. In the chief's office, it's a pity that the doctor is dead and the super soldier potion can no longer be made. Soldier Kyle, you have lost your only chance to become a super soldier, Commander Joseph said to Kyle with regret. He really felt sorry for Kyle. This is God's choice. Kyle sighed in response, but there was no ripple in his heart. With the card drawing ability in hand, who says you can't become a super soldier without the super soldier serum potion? Kyle opened his mouth and made a request. Captain Joseph, I heard that Steve succeeded. Can I go see him? I'm afraid not. Commander Joseph shook his head and explained. Steve is currently in a secret base, undergoing personal training to adapt his body to his new surroundings. General Chester has ordered that no one should disturb him. When will the training end? Kyle asked anxiously. I'm afraid it will take several months. Commander Joseph answered truthfully. A few months. Kyle frowned. This was similar to the plot in Captain America movie, but he didn't expect the training to be completely closed to the outside world. If you can't contact Steve, you won't be able to draw his ability card. A few months will pass quickly. By the way, General Chester also has new orders for you, Commander Joseph said solemnly. Soldier Kyle, due to your outstanding performance during the training period, you will be sent to the 102nd Regiment on the front line of the war as a top recruit to participate in the mission. Going to the front line? Kyle's heart was shocked. This sudden and important news was far beyond his imagination. Kyle, you are about to face a real war, so don't die so easily at the hands of the Nazis. After saying this, Commander Joseph placed the combat uniform, rifle ammunition, and mission information for going to the front line on the desk. Soldier, follow the general's orders. Kyle took the items and felt a little confused. He didn't expect that he would have to go to the front line and participate in World War II so soon. The original plan was to obtain the super soldier ability card from Steve so that we could face the war with strong protection, but we didn't expect it to happen so suddenly. This was also the drawback of Kyle's excellent training in the past few days, resulting in him graduating from the training base early and going to the front line. Commander Joseph waved goodbye and said, "There will be a transport plane coming to pick you up this afternoon. Go back early and prepare." Yes. Kyle nodded and walked out of the office with the items in his hand. Come back alive, boy. As he watched Kyle leave, Commander Joseph sighed. In a large-scale war, no matter how outstanding a soldier is, there is a high probability of death. Pushing open the door, the warm sunlight outside bathed in his face, sweeping away the haze in Kyle's heart. He relaxed his grip on the combat uniform and smiled. I walked to the bow, and it was natural. Now I am a special soldier among special soldiers in terms of both physique and skills. In addition, I have the card drawing system in hand. There is no reason for me to die in this mere World War II. If I have to die, I want to die by the snap of the fingers of the future Thanos. Kyle encouraged himself, gathered his spirits, and walked forward with confident steps. Chapter 7. Going into battle and killing the enemy in 1943 during World War II. The army led by German leader Adolf Hitler, and mainly composed of the Nazi Party, launched a large-scale invasion of Europe. As a new recruit, Kyle was sent directly to the 102nd Regiment of the 6th Marine Division camped in the front-line area. In the afternoon, a military transport plane came to the training base to pick up people, and Kyle arrived at the front-line area around 9 o'clock in the evening. As soon as the transport plane arrived above the temporary camp of the operations department, he understood why he was sent here in a hurry. Looking down from the plane, under a dozen warm and dim headlights, the tents and military supplies in the temporary camp were set up and placed in a mess, and the officers and soldiers there were like ants on hot pot. Those Nazi lunatics are still pushing forward, requesting more ammunition support. Someone come and help me get a medical stretcher. Where are the people? No one is coming from the rear yet. All troops, head to the combat zone to reinforce. We cannot let them take another step forward to trample on European territory. The combat commander gave orders in a hoarse voice through a loudspeaker, and the wailing wounded with broken limbs were constantly carried into the tent site by military doctors on ambulances. Soldiers covered in blood carried new ammunition and equipment that had just been delivered from the rear, got on muddy military vehicles, and drove headlong into the darkness in the direction of the combat zone. The U.S. military, which has always been famous for its strict discipline, was now in a state of panic and chaos. "Soldier, are you the new reinforcement?" A bearded officer with sweat all over his forehead stepped forward and grabbed Kyle, who had just got off a military helicopter. "Yes, Soldier Kyle is reporting." Kyle responded quickly. "You're just a new recruit? No need to report. We're short of manpower. Take your weapons and go straight to the battlefield. We'll do the weaving afterwards." The bearded officer said hurriedly, took Kyle's backpack, and threw it next to the military tent, as if he was treating him as cannon fodder. Indeed, new recruits with little combat experience who go to a large battlefield for the first time will basically never return. "I understand." Kyle took a deep breath. He was already wearing combat uniform and steel helmet. Holding an American rifle, he jumped directly into the back of a military vehicle carrying supplies. The four-wheel drive military vehicles kept coming and going without even stopping their engines, transporting supplies quickly to the battle zone ahead, with two beams of light in front of the vehicles sticking out into the darkness like sticks. Kyle gripped his American rifle tightly. As the bombing sounds in front of the military vehicles became clearer and clearer, his heartbeat and adrenaline continued to rise. "I don't seem to be afraid, but vaguely excited," Kyle muttered to himself. He drew too many ability cards, including more than a dozen cards that strengthen will. "Forget it. Let's divert our attention." Kyle's eyes fell on the supplies in the back of the car. With a thought, a series of densely packed item cards appeared on the surface of the boxes. First aid rack, emergency medical kit, military canned supplies, American grenade, American rifle, general term for American rifles, a box of medium caliber rifle bullets. The above are all numerous white item cards, among which there are also a few green items mixed in, such as high explosive grenade, high power sniper rifle, and short bazooka. These item cards are different from the past. They are all in a drawable state. "I see." Kyle's eyes lit up, and he said to himself, "I can't extract personal items that are in someone else's possession. And these materials are temporarily ownerless, so I can extract them freely and convert them into item cards to carry with me. It would be a waste if you don't take it." Kyle immediately began to extract the supplies from the vehicle, converting some of them into item cards to carry with him. Anyway, these were being hastily transported to the front line for combat, and no one would notice if there were a few less. However, he originally thought that green item cards, like green ability cards, would also take more than 3 minutes to draw. He did not expect that it would only take 3 seconds to draw unowned items. There are 5 rocket launchers, so 2 should be enough. Kyle hesitated for a moment when he drew the last draw. Suddenly, a fierce burst of gunfire rang out. The driver of the military vehicle screamed, and the military vehicle, shook violently and crashed into an obstacle and stopped. Enemy attack. Kyle reacted very quickly. His body immediately tensed up. He squatted quietly with his gun in hand, leaning against the back wall of the cabin, and pricked up his ears to listen to any sounds outside. Tap, tap, tap. Several footsteps approached quickly. Kyle soon realized that the enemy did not seem to want to destroy the supply truck directly, but wanted to plunder it. They are reluctant to destroy the supplies in the car. This is my chance. Kyle was extremely calm. Hundreds of practical skills and ability cards were perfectly demonstrated at this moment. He held the gun in his right hand and quietly stretched out his left hand towards the air. A green item card quickly turned from virtual to real and was clamped between his two fingers. Unlike ability cards, which can only be used to demonstrate their own skills, item cards are entities converted into cards. So item cards can be virtualized and materialized, or directly converted back to their original state for use. Be careful. Go and have a look. Don't let your guard down. Two enemy soldiers were whispering in German and trotting towards the back of a military vehicle covered with a green tarpaulin. Just as they were about to pry open the tarpaulin with their bayonet-equipped rifles, a black, round metal object was thrown out from inside. FK grenade! Get down! As soon as the words fell, the two German soldiers in the front were blown to pieces. As gravel, blood, and flesh flew everywhere in the night, a figure quickly rushed out from the back of the car. There are enemies! The remaining 3 German soldiers who were on guard not far away shouted, tightened their wrenches, and fired at the area behind the car. All the bullets missed the target and hit the ground and the bodies of their companions. Too fast. Under the cover of darkness and high-explosive grenades, they had no time to lock on Kyle's figure. By the time they reacted and looked around, Kyle's tough counterattack had already begun. Bang! Loud gunshots rang out from the darkness, and a German soldier at the front was shot in the head right between his eyebrows, and red and white liquid splattered all over the other 2 soldiers. The 2 soldiers were so terrified that they didn't have time to confirm the direction of the bullet before 2 more gunshots were heard. No more, no less, just 3 shots in total. The sound of the gunshots was like the decree of the death god, and the remaining German soldiers soon became corpses lying on the ground. Not bad. Kyle walked out from behind a tree in the dark and glanced at the bodies of the soldiers lying in a pool of blood. He just rushed out of the back compartment of the car and glanced to confirm the enemy's position. After avoiding the first wave of fierce bullets, he fired accurately with his gun. The first battle in his life, a 1-on-5 fight in which he killed the enemy without taking any damage, was simply perfect. First time killing someone, Kyle looked at the half-mutilated body of a German soldier nearby, whose eyes were still wide open, obviously having died with his eyes open. There was no joy or sadness on his face, and he was as cold and indifferent as a death god. Kyle originally thought that after experiencing his first murder, coupled with the extremely bloody scene before him, he would at least vomit. But in fact, he felt nothing in his heart. His extremely resolute heart told him that if he didn't kill them, he would be lying on the ground now as a cold corpse. I'm not doing this for some American justice of defending my country. I'm doing this for myself. And I want to be able to survive in this world and gain a foothold to achieve something. Kyle said coldly to the corpses on the ground, "You're just unlucky to have met me." Chapter 8, Cruel War. After the short battle, Kyle began to collect the spoils on the field. After the death of German soldiers, all the items they carried became extractable. Hey, what is this? Kyle looked at the 2 parchment scrolls he had searched from a German soldier. With a thought, he saw the information on the 2 item cards. Encrypted Map 1 contains a detailed topographic map of the German Army's local combat zone, as well as the location of their own temporary base area. Encrypted Map 2 contains information collected by the German elite team on the distribution of U.S. military forces in the combat zone, combat camps, and material transportation routes. No wonder they dare to go deep behind enemy lines. They turned out to be an elite team sent by Germany. Kyle showed a thoughtful look and put the 2 sheepskin map cards on his body. The map is equivalent to a strategy, showing the distribution of the 2 armies' respective forces, as well as the detailed terrain of the local area. No wonder the German army brought such great offensive pressure to the U.S. Army. Kyle quickly took the equipment from the German soldiers and then transferred it to the military supplies in his own military vehicle. Kyle had no problem with having too much ammunition, and he took all the military supplies that should have been looted by the enemy for himself, without feeling the slightest bit of guilt. Finally, looking at the military vehicle that he had looted, Kyle thought for a moment, cleaned up the 2 American soldiers' bodies in the driver's seat, and turned the slightly damaged military vehicle into a card and took it with him. After completing the card drawing task, Kyle was now fully armed with a truckload of military supplies. After getting ready, Kyle stood on a small dirt slope and looked at the battle zone not far ahead, muttering, "It's time to join the battle on the front line." After experiencing the baptism of killing an enemy for the first time in his life, Kyle has a deeper understanding of his own strength. He believes that with the ability cards and item cards on him, he can dare to take part in even a large-scale war. Since it is an inevitable experience in a reborn life, let the war be more intense. Frontline combat zone. Boom! Da-da-da! The sounds of numerous shells and artillery fire mix together like a symphony of thunder and rain, the red-blue flames of bullets bursting out from the muzzles, and the dazzling daylight of shells and grenades exploding at night as American and German soldiers fought fiercely. The U.S. military was mainly engaged in defensive resistance, using stones and soil piled up in earth pits as cover, arranging them in lines, and constantly blocking German soldiers who wanted to break through the front line. Although bullets and artillery shells continued to take the lives of the German soldiers who were rushing forward, the German army was still advancing inch by inch, using the corpses of their comrades lying on the ground as cover, and the distance between the 2 armies' combat zones was constantly shrinking. These Nazis are all brainwashed. They're just war maniacs who don't care about their lives. The black sergeant leading a U.S. military team gritted his teeth, glanced at the soldiers around him who were struggling with bloodshot eyes, clenched his fists, and growled into the combat intercom. "Our soldiers are running out of ammunition. Haven't the reinforcements and supplies from the rear arrived yet? If this continues, our central defensive line can only hold out for another 10 minutes." As soon as the sergeant finished speaking, a dull bombardment sounded suddenly. The shell dragged a harsh tail sound and landed on the earth pit a few meters away from him. A soldier next to him was instantly blown to pieces. "What is this?" The sergeant was rolled to the ground by the power of the shell. Regardless of the tinnitus and physical discomfort, he struggled to stand up. He looked forward from the bombed earthen fortress and saw huge amounts of steel machines crawling forward like a monster, and countless bodies of German soldiers on the ground were crushed into minced meat by the wheels. "Those Nazi beasts have been holding back until now, and they still have tanks to send in? I was wrong, it's not 10 minutes, but 10 seconds, and a hole will be torn in the battle zone's defense line." The sergeant showed a look of despair. The German tank moved forward while adjusting the direction of its artillery fire. Just before the second shell was fired, the sergeant suddenly heard the same dull and huge amounts of artillery fire behind him. Boom! Not only did the rocket launcher make a piercing sound, but thick smoke billowed from the tail of the gun, dragging a parabola across the sky above the war zone, accurately crossing a distance of 40 meters and landing on the barrel of the German tank. It happened that the tank's second shell had not yet been fired from the gun port, and suddenly, with a burst of brilliant sparks, the steel tank turned into a pile of scrap metal, causing many casualties among the German troops who wanted to follow the breakthrough. Nice! The American soldiers who witnessed this scene were immediately overjoyed. The black sergeant also opened his eyes wide. The originally desperate situation was instantly turned around by this rocket launcher. He couldn't help but turn his head back. A dozen meters behind the earth pit defense line, a sturdy and handsome young man was carrying a rocket launcher on his shoulder with one hand. It was Kyle who had just rushed over. Seeing that many soldiers were focusing their attention on him, Kyle smiled slightly. "Soldier Kyle, come to reinforce." This torturous and cruel defense war lasted a whole night. From night until the eastern sky turned pale and the first ray of dawn fell on the front battlefield, the German army gave up the suicidal breakthrough and retreated like a receding tide. In this way, it can be regarded as a short-term victory for the U.S. military. This was a tragic victory. The defense line divided people into life and death, and the bodies of German and American soldiers piled up like mountains on the wilderness battlefield. Several miles of land were turned into scorched earth, and dark red blood infected the earth. Countless surviving American soldiers didn't even have the energy to cheer. After enduring a night of continuous high-intensity fighting, they were physically and mentally exhausted. Many of them fainted on the ground, their hands still tightly grasping their rifles. Kyle also sat in the pit with a tired look on his face, his body covered in blood and dirt. This night's experience was unprecedented. Although he has the skill level of a sharpshooter and can kill a life with one bullet, the harsh living environment on the battlefield and the continuous influx of enemy troops also put him under huge amounts of death pressure. Just like a tug-of-war against the death god, the body needs to be tense at all times. If you relax even a little, the enemy's bullet may make a bloody hole in any part of the body. This is the big war. Only after the enemy retreated did Kyle throw the gun with the red-hot barrel on the ground. The rifle was smoking and hissing, and it was obviously scrapped after completing its mission. "Soldier, your name is Kyle, right?" The black sergeant approached with difficulty. His left eye was completely disabled, and one of his hands was hanging down due to a bullet wound, but he still grinned with his white teeth. "You look so young. Is this your first time on the battlefield?" "Right." Kyle nodded breathlessly. "This is your first time on the battlefield, and it's such a large-scale war. Your performance is too outstanding. You can't be treated as a rookie at all. When I go back, I will apply to the colonel for military merit for you individually." The sergeant exclaimed, "Whatever. After experiencing such a war, I feel like I'm still alive. This is already the blessing of the goddess of victory." Kyle said with emotion, "Yes, we are lucky to be alive." The sergeant smiled and said, "Wait a little longer. There will be reinforcements coming from the rear soon to replace us. We can have a good rest for half a day." "Rest? I'm afraid I can't." Kyle shook his head, patted his military jacket pocket, and said, "I have something very important to hand over to the colonel." Chapter 9: Captain America and the counterattack inside the temporary camp on the front line, at the headquarters tent. In the battle that lasted all night last night, we have lost 987 soldiers. The German enemy has suffered more casualties than us, and the current statistics show that nearly 2,000 people. After listening to the report from his soldiers, Colonel Marcos frowned deeply. Nearly 3,000 soldiers were killed, and countless more were injured and unable to fight. You can imagine how tragic the battle last night was. The German Nazis were so crazy about occupying this area last night. They must want to use it as a strategic area and then break into the heart of European territory. Although they have temporarily withdrawn their troops just now, they will definitely not give up so easily. They will come back soon after resting. "Communicator, how many troops can come to reinforce our rear?" Colonel Marcos frowned. The communications soldier replied, "The rest of the frontline areas are also very short of manpower and military supplies. There are only 3 troops with 300 people that can come to reinforce here. One of the troops is composed entirely of pure recruits who were temporarily formed from the training base." New recruits? Colonel Marcos couldn't help but roar when he heard this. What's the use of new recruits? This is the front line, not a daycare center. At this moment, a soldier's voice came from outside the tent. "Report." A soldier named Kyle came and said he has something important to inform the colonel. "Soldier Kyle?" Colonel Marcos was stunned. After thinking for a while, he didn't remember that there was suddenly such a person in his camp. After thinking for a while, he let Kyle in. As soon as Kyle walked into the tent, Colonel Marcos was slightly startled when he saw him and blurted out, "Aren't you the new recruit who reported in last night?" "Yes, Colonel Marcos." Kyle nodded and recognized him. The colonel in front of him was the officer who met him at the airport last night and sent him directly to the frontline combat zone. "What are you doing here?" Colonel Marcos asked in a cold voice. Kyle hadn't even washed himself yet, and his combat uniform was covered in bloody dirt. "I obtained very important intelligence from a team of German elites last night. I think it will be of great help to the battle, so I came to see you directly after the battle," Kyle said, taking out 2 parchment scrolls from his pocket. "German elite team? Intelligence object?" Colonel Marcos was surprised. He immediately took the parchment roll and asked, "How did you get it?" "Of course we killed them and found it from their bodies. Kyle shrugged and briefly recounted the encounter with the German elite team on the way to the combat zone. You have killed all the elite enemy teams lurking in the rear area of our main army. Colonel Marcos felt unbelievable. He then spread out the parchment scroll with a bit of trepidation and saw that the content was a map and countless German code words. It's really the German intelligence code. Colonel Marcos opened his eyes wide, surprised and happy. The intelligence information they collected in the combat zone should be all on it. Communication soldier. Go to the rear immediately and ask for professionals who can decipher the code. No need. Kyle waved his hand gently. Unnecessary. Colonel Marcos and the communications soldier looked at Kyle in confusion. Kyle's tired young face showed a smile. German code words, I just happened to learn them from the professionals at the training base. 3 days later. 3 days have passed since Kyle was sent to fight on the front lines. At this time, the underground laboratory. Bang, bang, bang. In the training ground, the hanging heavyweight sandbags were constantly thrown away by the powerful blows of fists. Wearing a sweat-soaked vest, the tall and strong blonde young man stood steadily in front of the sandbag. With every ordinary punch he threw, he exerted unimaginable and amazing power, ravaging the sandbag and making it swing back and forth. Carter, who was watching from the side, showed pity in her beautiful eyes and reminded him, Steve, it's time to take a break. You've been like this for an hour. Bang! Steve seemed not to hear it and continued to punch the sandbag with greater force, sweat dripping onto the ground. Steve! Carter raised his voice coldly, and Steve slapped the sandbag, causing the swing-like sandbag to finally stop. Steve smiled bitterly and said, What am I like now? A super soldier? Or an experiment hidden in the basement? I don't want to be like that. Steve, your battle is yet to come, Carter said comfortingly. When will it arrive? How long do I have to wait? Steve's handsome and upright face was filled with pain, and he said dejectedly, My brother Kyle has gone to the front line to fight, and I, Steve Rogers, who was entrusted with great hopes by him, stay here to live a peaceful life without the sound of war. Kyle. Hearing this name, Carter fell silent. I should be able to do more than spend my boring time here, Steve said. Of course. Soldier Steve, you can certainly do more. A powerful voice suddenly interrupted, and Steve and Carter looked sideways, only to see that it was a middle-aged man in a suit and tie. I'm a senator. I have a lot of stage resources and opportunities at my disposal, enough for you to show your extraordinary talents to the people of the country. It will also be a powerful boost to the current war. The senator smiled and took out a business card from his pocket and handed it over. I call it the Captain America promotional plan. Captain America? Steve was stunned and hesitated for a moment, but finally took the business card handed over by the senator. At the same time, camp was set up on the front line. Kyle, the colonel asked you to go to the headquarters. Headquarters? Kyle, who had just returned from combat, was slightly stunned. He handed the gun in his hand to the communicator who was responsible for delivering the message and walked directly to the white tent of the headquarters. Soldier Kyle, reporting in, come in. As Kyle stepped into the tent, he discovered that it was filled with officers in military uniforms, nearly a dozen of them. Colonel Marcos, the highest-ranking officer in the headquarters, was sitting on a chair. When he saw Kyle coming in, he raised his voice and introduced everyone. This is the soldier who brought back the 2 intelligence maps 3 days ago and completed the interpretation, Kyle. A dozen officers immediately focused their attention on Kyle and were amazed to see how handsome and young he was. Soldier Kyle, you really did a great job this time. Yes, I heard that there is a map that collects information about our military camp. If it was taken back by those damn Nazis, I'm afraid this place would have been blown away by the bomber's shells now. Don't come on, the second map is more important. It's all important. They were able to bring back the intelligence map and interpret it. The quality of the new recruits is really getting better and better. Rare talents, our army needs this kind of fresh blood. Kyle was caught up in a flurry of verbal praise until Colonel Marcos cleared his throat with a cough, and then everyone in the tent calmed down. Soldier Kyle, you have made a great contribution to the army. I will report it to you after we succeed in this battle. Colonel Marcos said solemnly. Kyle's pupils shrank, and he said in surprise, "The result of this battle? Could it be that?" "That's right." Colonel Marcos nodded, spread the information from the second parchment scroll on the table, and said majestically, "Thanks to you, the second map I interpreted marked several German camps outside the combat zone here. With it, the general has issued the latest order. Tonight, we will usher in the first large-scale counterattack." Chapter 10. Promotion to Corporal. The purpose of this counterattack is to concentrate our forces and destroy the 5 German camps in one fell swoop. The coded information on the map shows that there is a large combat base, 3 medium-sized camps, and a transit camp with fewer troops. Colonel Marcos began to explain, and every officer in the headquarters tent listened attentively, obviously having been waiting for the opportunity to counterattack for a long time. Having been passively suppressed by the German army, the frontline defense area will fall completely sooner or later. But if this counterattack is successful, it will be able to dampen the German army's fighting spirit. The enemy's large combat base is planned to be raided by me and 2 colonels with more than 5 troops. The 3 medium-strength camps will be led by 3 officers with the rank of lieutenant or above, with 3 troops. As Colonel Marcos spoke, he pointed with his fingers on a large map. The map was a 3-dimensional simulation map specially designed for military use. It clearly showed 5 German camps and fortresses outside the defense line. It looks like this is going to be a big one. The commander of the operation is personally on the scene. We have the intelligence of the enemy's base coordinates, a fairly sufficient force arrangement, and a surprise attack at night. It's hard to lose this operation. Kyle thought to himself that he was in charge of deciphering the coded messages and was familiar with the intelligence information recorded on the map. When he heard the colonel's plan for the distribution of military forces for the raid, he knew that this war was basically a sure win. This is the importance of intelligence to war. The winner is often the party that has the upper hand. In the following time, Colonel Marcos assigned the troops to each officer and the raid plans one by one. After knowing their tasks for the night, the officers quickly left the tent with a small copy of the battle plan and began to prepare for the arrangements before the raid. Soon, Kyle was the only one left in the headquarters tent. "Commander, have you forgotten about me?" Kyle secretly complained, looking at Colonel Marcos, who sat back in his chair. But he didn't waste time. He took the opportunity of the planning meeting to draw a few good green ability cards from the officers around him. Although after green ability cards have accumulated to a certain level, the stacking of ability cards of similar professions will not have a significant effect on improving physical fitness and ability. Colonel Marcos took a sip of water and then turned his attention to Kyle. His tense face relaxed a little, and he said with a smile, "Soldier Kyle, tonight's raid is very important. Although you just came back from the frontline combat zone this morning, you still have to participate in the raid in the evening after resting in the afternoon. Of course, it's my honor as an American soldier to be able to participate in the first counterattack against the Nazis. I will do my best to kill the enemy tonight," Kyle said righteously. "I have heard from many sergeants these days about your will and drive as a soldier, as well as your amazing performance on the battlefield." Colonel Marcos nodded with satisfaction. He was really satisfied with this new soldier, and he liked him more and more the more he looked at him. For a new recruit who has just arrived on the battlefield, it would be good enough to expect him to perform at 70% of his normal level of strength. But Kyle, who had just arrived, behaved like a veteran who had experienced many battles and was like a fish in water on the battlefield. In addition to arranging the counterattack plan in the past few days, Colonel Marcos also deliberately confirmed Kyle's identity again and again with the rear base, fearing that he was a secret spy disguised by the German army. Colonel Marcos moistened his throat and said meaningfully, "But tonight, I am not just asking you to conduct a surprise attack as a soldier." "Not as a soldier? Then what is it?" Kyle was surprised and suddenly seemed to have guessed something and said with a strange face, "Colonel, you won't let me lead the troops to raid the 5th small German transit station camp tonight." "That's right." Colonel Marcos nodded, indicating that he was not joking. He took out a military rank badge from the drawer, placed it on the table, and said precisely, "Of course. You are not leading as a soldier, but as a corporal." "Me, corporal?" Kyle pointed at his nose in amazement. Although the rank of corporal is not high, in the Army, it can definitely be regarded as entering the level of non-commissioned officer. After 3 days of combat, He skipped the ranks of privates and went straight to the rank of corporal? Since when did the rank of corporal become so worthless? Why? You don't believe in your own ability. Colonel Marcos smiled. Of course I believe I have the ability, but I never expected to be promoted directly to corporal and soldier. Kyle shrugged and quickly calmed down. In peacetime, it takes 3 days to be promoted from a recruit to a corporal. Even with a general as a backer, it is impossible to do this. Colonel Marcos said solemnly. But this is a world war. Soldier Kyle, the number of enemies you have personally killed in the wars you have experienced in the past few days is probably several times more than the number of enemies killed by veterans who have lived in peacetime in the past decade or so. With your outstanding individual combat performance and unique intelligence analysis skills, it's a pity for a talent like you to just be a soldier. Since you have the ability, the Army is in urgent need of elite talents like you, and you have substantial military merit as a foundation. What's the point of being promoted directly to corporal? I see. Kyle nodded. Heroes emerge in troubled times. Precisely because of the conflict during World War II, people with abilities were able to quickly advance in rank regardless of their background and experience. I like this period. Kyle's mouth curled up slightly. His blue eyes were full of confidence. For the first time, he felt lucky to be reborn in Marvel's World War II era. Colonel Marcos smiled and said, "Don't worry. This is your first time leading a troop, and this is such an important counterattack. I won't let you command it alone." "That's good. I was afraid I would mess it up on my own." Kyle breathed a sigh of relief. He now knew clearly that the colonel was giving him a chance to train while launching a counterattack. Colonel Marcos shouted outside the tent, "Communicator, go get Sergeant Fury." Sergeant Fury? Kyle stroked his chin. The name sounded familiar to him. But after a while, a black officer walked into the tent. His left eye was still bandaged with gauze, but he was already wearing a complete combat uniform, looking ready to go. "It's you, Sergeant," Kyle exclaimed in surprise. The person who walked in was the black sergeant he met when he first experienced the battlefield. "Soldier Kyle." "No, Corporal Kyle." Sergeant Fury greeted the colonel cordially, then saluted the colonel. "Sir, I am Sergeant Fury. I have recovered and returned to the team, and I can carry out all action plans." "Very good." Colonel Marcos nodded and introduced to Kyle. "This is your team leader tonight, Nick Fury. He has been in command as a sergeant for some time and has rich experience in field command." Kyle blinked, and when he heard the black officer's name, he was stunned. "Nick Fury? The new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the 21st century? Please take care of me tonight." Sergeant Fury nodded at Kyle with a gloomy face. He was far from the fierce and domineering aura he would have in the future, but he still looked very young, only about 25 years old. "You're welcome." Kyle calmed himself down. It was World War II now, and not to mention the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., even S.H.I.E.L.D. had not yet been established. But fighting with the future director of S.H.I.E.L.D.? This is quite interesting. Chapter 11 Sacrifice Card Draw. Colonel Marcos looked at Kyle and Fury and said, "Since you two know each other, I won't say much else. Tonight, you will lead a fully armed force of 100 people to the 5th location, the small transit point of the German army, for a surprise attack. Remember, this time 5 forces will counterattack at the same time. After you reach your destination, you must complete the attack mission within the specified time." Colonel Marcos said this, his eyes sharp as an eagle's. "You can only succeed, not fail." "Understood. I promise to complete the task." Fury and Kyle saluted solemnly, indicating that they had fully accepted the mission instructions. "Then Corporal Kyle, you should go back and rest. Sergeant Fury, you should arrange for the troops to assemble now. When the time comes tonight, the two of you will lead the troops to set off on time." Colonel Marcos gave the two a brief mission report and a small combat map before letting Kyle and Fury leave. "Kyle, see you tonight." Fury said goodbye to Kyle as soon as he left the command tent. Although his left eye was still injured, he was very concerned about the raid mission. After saying goodbye, he trotted directly to the supply area of the temporary camp. Kyle went straight back to his temporary tent. Man is not made of iron. Although his physique is at the top level among soldiers, he can't stand the continuous war fighting. Lying in a not-so-comfortable bed, Kyle closed his eyes to rest, but his mind entered a huge amount of space. Card space. It was like being in a dream, in a vast and boundless cubic white space. The hundreds and thousands of cards that were extracted and accumulated on a daily basis were spinning like a hurricane. Although we are confident of a surprise attack tonight, we still cannot be careless. We need to find ways to improve our combat power. Kyle's mind incarnation was at the center of the card storm, viewing the cards that were flying past him. During these 3 days, his card drawing ability has obviously been further improved. First of all, there is the ability to enter the card space with your mind, to freely view and read the cards you have drawn, and to simulate the use of the cards. Then, you will get a card drawing ability called Sacrifice Extraction. Just as the name suggests, sacrifice and draw cards means selecting any 10 item cards of the same color and grade from the inventory of your own card space. After sacrificing them, there is a high probability of drawing any card of the same color and a small probability of drawing any card of a higher grade. The first level is equivalent to a qualitative leap from a white card to a green card. So far, Kale has not obtained any cards higher than green, whether ability cards or item cards. What exactly is the card beyond green like? Kyle was very curious. According to the positioning of the rare green cards he had come into contact with so far, if it was an ability card, it would have reached the pinnacle of professionalism. If it is an item, it is also a precious item of considerable value. A card that goes one level higher than green. Then the ability card should be classified as a super ability. And item cards can also be considered as real black technology items. Either one of them will be of huge amounts of help to me in my current situation. Kyle muttered to himself and waved his hands to separate the ability cards and item cards in the card space. The next step is easy. Kyle will keep some items that have combat value and collect most of the item cards that can be discarded for sacrifice. Finally, the summary is obtained. Green item cards, 66. White item cards, 389. I still feel like it's not enough, but this is the result of my secret draws in the past 3 days of going back and forth on the battlefield. Kyle sighed and proceeded to the next step with some reluctance. Sacrifice Extraction. Use sacrificed American rifle, steel helmet, a box of rifle bullets, communication device. The 10 selected white item cards disappear from the card space, and then a new white card emerges. The extraction was successful. Congratulations on obtaining additional life. Life-enhancing card. Kyle's heart trembled, and he quickly reached out to take the new white card to check it. Add life. Increase the user's natural lifespan by 3 months. White rare ability card. Current status. Available to others. Increase natural lifespan? How can I explain that? It won't work if you're beaten to death, right? Kyle's face was filled with disappointment. This life-extending card seemed to be different from what he had imagined. But it's true. It's just a rare white ability card. How can it possibly achieve that God-level resurrection effect? But this ability card can actually be used on others, which is pretty good. Maybe a higher-level ability card can actually bring someone back to life. Kyle thought optimistically and continued to make sacrifices and draw. I've been reborn as an American. Please give me some luck. The extraction was successful. Congratulations on obtaining the gentleman's suit. A piece of clothing. Congratulations. Kyle's heart was bleeding, but his body remained honest and continued to make the sacrifice. The draw was successful. Congratulations on winning this stainless steel water cup. This is too watery. Keep offering sacrifices and draw. The extraction was successful. Congratulations on obtaining basic Japanese proficiency. What the hell? Give me another one. The extraction was successful. Congratulations on obtaining the Warring State saddle. What a huge loss. Really a huge loss. I exchanged 10 white item cards for this thing. Kyle's mind incarnation had bloodshot eyes and stared at the cards like a gambler. He finally understood that the sacrifice could draw any card, but the word any had too broad a scope, and the things that could be drawn were all mixed. However, some item cards are useless if left alone, so it is better to sacrifice them and draw them, hoping for a little luck. The extraction was successful. Congratulations on obtaining bats? And animals? Kyle was slightly stunned. His eyes quickly fell on the newly appeared card. Bat can summon an ordinary bat to fight for you. White bio card. Current status. Continuous use. Should I summon? Bio card. Kyle suddenly realized that what he obtained directly from the resources around him were ability cards and item cards. This was the first time he saw the third type of card. If I have a certain number of creature cards as support, then I can be promoted directly to a summoner. Kyle smiled and listed the bat card as a combat resource. Continue to sacrifice and draw until more than 300 idle white item cards are used up. Apart from a bunch of foreign language basics, 3 white rare, life adder cards, and 2 biological cards, bat and Shiba Inu, are of practical value. I sacrificed white cards more than 30 times, but didn't draw a single green quality card. The probability of drawing a super first level card is really too small. Kyle had no choice but to turn his attention to the 60-odd green item cards. Most of these were picked out from the dead man pile on the battlefield and were not easy to come by. There are only 6 chances to draw the sacrifice. If a person dies, then everything is gone. Kyle gritted his teeth and sacrificed 60 green item cards at the same time. Sacrifice, extract. The extraction was successful. Congratulations on getting Add Life, Luxury Evening Dress, Toxic Hornet's Nest, Nepalese Saber, Street Parkour, Stealth. This is... Kyle's eyes widened. Among the new cards, a blue card stood out, and its dazzling brilliance made the thousands of white and green cards in the card space pale in comparison. Chapter 12. The raid begins. The sun sets below the horizon, and after the bright red sunset glow fades in the sky, night arrives as expected. After nightfall, in the frontline combat zone, the German army retreated safely as they had in the previous few days. At this time, the temporary combat camp of the U.S. military was quietly becoming lively. Hundreds of young American soldiers dressed in combat uniforms, holding American rifles in their hands and carrying military green backpacks containing ammunition and supplies, stood in line in standard military posture. This was because the locations of the 5 German camps attacked were different, so the assembly times of the 5 troops were staggered. Otherwise, the gathering of thousands of soldiers would definitely fill up the open space in the temporary camp. Fury assembled the 100-man force he was in charge of early on and explained in detail to them the precautions for tonight's raid. I know some of you are new recruits who have just been transferred from the training base, so please pay attention and remember the precautions I just gave you. Don't hold me back tonight. On the battlefield, if anyone retreats or disobeys orders, I will not use a military court to warn him, but simply cut a hole in his forehead. Fury, who was educating the soldiers, stood alone in front of the troops. He was no longer gentle as he was in the command center. His dark face was stern, and his only remaining right eye was as ferocious and domineering as a wolf. Hundreds of soldiers were silent. Among them, a young man standing at the rear of the unit was looking around slightly while standing firm in his military posture, as if he was looking for someone. The new recruit who noticed this scene whispered, "George, this is not a training base. Don't desert." "I know," George responded in a low voice. "Have you seen Kyle? He was sent to the front line a few days ago. He is very likely in this temporary combat camp." The new soldier muttered, "Kyle? He might have died in battle a long time ago." No matter how superior his qualities and talents are, the training base and the battlefield are completely different. I hope he can do better and live to see. The battlefield is where my true talent is demonstrated. George clenched his fists. His physical fitness and talent were among the best among the recruits, but he had always been suppressed by Kyle in the training base. "Who?" Fury's voice suddenly sounded, startling George. He quickly came to his senses and looked over, only to find that the sergeant was not talking about him. "It's me." Outside the lighted area of the assembly ground, a sturdy man walked out from the darkness of the night and approached the troops. When the young and handsome face of the man appeared under the light, many new recruits in the army of 100 people cried out in surprise, and some even found it difficult to maintain their military posture. "Kyle?" George opened his eyes wide in disbelief. With his strong self-esteem, how could he forget the young man who appeared in front of everyone at this moment? In just 1 week, he impressed all kinds of professional training instructors, broke various individual combat records in the training base, and refreshed all the shooting target scores of pistols, rifles, sniper rifles, and rocket launchers. Even though Kyle went to the front line ahead of time, rumors about him are still circulating in the training base. and there is even an exaggerated trend of him evolving into a legend. Even the hot-tempered training instructors often use Kyle as an example to reprimand the new recruits. Silence. Fury raised his voice, and with a sharp glance of his one eye, the noise in the 100-man army subsided. Kyle did not choose to carry a military backpack, but instead hung a rifle on his shoulder, a Nepalese machete in a cowhide scabbard on his waist, and two small pistols on the left and right sides of his legs. He was the lightest equipped person in the army on the field. He walked directly beside Fury, facing the soldiers' gazes coldly. When the new recruits in the army were puzzled, Fury introduced them seriously. "This is Corporal Kyle, one of the leading officers tonight. For tonight's raid mission, you must obey our instructions completely. Do you understand?" "Understood." The soldiers responded in unison. Even if they were given 100 courages, they would not dare to say the word no. "Kyle, Corporal?" George was stunned when he saw Kyle. When he heard his rank, he could not help but lower his head in shame, fearing that Kyle would recognize him. The recruit who had just talked to George also felt like he had been slapped in the face, muttering to himself, "I was wrong. Monster. It really is a monster wherever it goes." "It's almost time to set off, right?" Kyle asked Fury. He spent a lot of time to master the newly drawn cards and came here at the right time. "Yes, it's time to go." Fury looked down at the time displayed on the instrument in his hand and waved to the 100-man army. "All soldiers, listen up, follow the military vehicle, and trot to the mission location." As soon as Fury finished speaking, he and Kyle got into the idle military vehicle in the open space. The military vehicle with strong off-road performance braked very quickly and took the lead to drive into the wilderness outside the combat camp. Raid missions. It did not directly and obviously cross the defense line, but made a big detour in the wilderness to avoid enemy detection and headed directly to the mountains and woods next to the wilderness. After arriving at the designated location, Fury and Kyle abandoned the military vehicle and started climbing the mountain with a 100-man team, crossing the dense jungle in the dark. If you don't know the exact location of the German camp, such a detour is just a waste of time. However, if you have intelligence, you can go deep into the enemy camp. After crossing this hill, we are very close to the location of the small transit station camp mentioned in the intelligence. "Soldiers, pass on the order. Everyone, be on alert. If you see the enemy, don't alert them. Keep quiet and wait for orders." Kyle, who was at the front of the troops, spoke coldly. Although it was his first time leading a troop, he had a certain confidence and domineering attitude. Fury next to him suddenly frowned and said, "Kyle, I feel something is wrong." "Huh?" Kyle looked at him in surprise. Fury shone a small flashlight on the mission map and said solemnly, "Look at the map. After crossing this mountain, it's not very far from the combat zone, but it's too far from the German rear base camp. This location is not suitable as a transit point for resource transportation. Do you think the intelligence we received is false?" Kyle also frowned. "It's hard to say. Let's look further ahead. Even if it's fake, we can retreat safely to this position." After Fury finished his analysis, the two continued to lead the soldiers over the top of the mountain, over mountains and across rivers. When Kyle and Fury, who were at the front of the team, pushed aside the bushes that blocked their view, the scene below that came directly into their vision made them both freeze at the same time. At the foot of the hill, there was a circular iron fence covering a 100-meter wilderness area. Every 10 meters, there was a gun turret as an outer wall fortress. There were lights on everywhere inside the iron fence, and a large number of German soldiers could be vaguely seen patrolling back and forth. "Oh my God! Is this the small transit camp mentioned in the intelligence?" Fury opened his mouth in horror, unable to speak. It seems that the location of the intelligence is correct, but the target attack camp is not quite the same as I imagined. Kyle remained calm, but he also had the urge to swear. This can no longer be called a camp, but the scale of an enemy base. Chapter 13 Stealth Card. I kind of understand why. Kyle looked at the enemy base at the foot of the mountain and said, "The information we got from the sheepskin map, that is, the location of the German camp, is true. But the Nazis left a secret code." Fury took over the conversation thoughtfully. "So that's how it is. They actually switched the file size information to the camp scale. That's it." Kyle nodded. Of the 5 German enemy camps, only one was a large base. 3 were medium-sized camps, and the other was a small transit station camp. The German army exchanged secret codes between large bases and small transit camps, which must be said to be very sophisticated. Fury smiled bitterly. That is to say, what we are facing now is the enemy base that the colonel planned to lead more than 5 troops to raid. And the target that the colonel is leading his troops to now is the small camp that we should have dealt with. There's no point in complaining now, Kyle asked coldly. Fury, you have more experience in on-the-spot combat than I do. Facing this situation, what do you think we should do? Fury frowned, staring at the enemy base in the distance with his one eye. After thinking for a moment, he said unwillingly, "It is obvious that we can only give up the raid. With only 100 troops, even if we have the initiative in the raid, it will undoubtedly be a waste of our lives." Kyle continued to ask, "Can't we contact the colonel through the communication device we brought with us?" "No." Fury shook his head without even thinking and said precisely, "We are too close to the enemy base. Using a communication machine at this distance will easily be intercepted by the enemy. And now there is not much time left for the rest of the troops to launch a surprise attack. Once the other 4 enemy camps are attacked by our troops, the large base here will get wind of it," Kyle said expressionlessly. "So, according to conventional combat judgment, we can only give up the raid mission, right?" "Fury, have you forgotten? We promised our commander that we would complete the raid." But Fury looked embarrassed. "No buts," Kyle interrupted him and continued to guide him. "If we give up the opportunity to raid the large base now, once the enemy becomes alert, it will be difficult to find such an opportunity next time." Fury seemed to have realized what was happening. He looked at Kyle in surprise and said sternly, "Don't keep me in suspense. Do you think you have an idea? I still can't hide it from you. But this is not an idea, but a battle plan." Kyle smiled faintly and leaned over to whisper a few words in Fury's ear. After hearing this, Fury stared at Kyle as if he was a madman and said tremblingly, "Sneaking into the base alone? Are you crazy? Or do you want to die?" Kyle shrugged and said seriously, "I'm not crazy. At this point, if we want to complete the raid, we have no choice but to take this risk. If we can sneak into the enemy base and destroy the defense mechanism inside, and then attack from the outside with a 100-man force, there is still a certain chance of success. It's not that easy to sneak into a large base like this." Fury shook his head. "This is my business. I just need your recognition and support," Kyle said coldly. Fury fell silent. He stared at Kyle with his one eye for a while, then said slowly and forcefully, "To be honest, I have no reason to dissuade you. After all, no one wants to give up before the mission even begins. So, you can give it a try, but let me say this first. If you fail, I will directly retreat with my troops. Don't worry, I will never put my life on others." Kyle threw down these words and dived forward immediately, accelerating along the slope, and his back soon disappeared into the night below the mountain. "What a madman." Fury sighed. It would be suicidal for a single soldier to head directly to a large base. But for some reason, Kyle gave him a feeling of confidence. Perhaps it was because of that wonderful feeling that Fury chose to agree to this extremely risky way of fighting. After Kyle left the team, he was the first to take off his American combat uniform in the jungle at the foot of the mountain, and then selected a suitable German soldier combat uniform from the card space and put it on. Kyle proposed to sneak into the enemy base alone. Of course, he was not going to die, but he had enough confidence to protect himself. This confidence comes from the blue card drawn from today's sacrifice. Sneak. Transform into Nightcrawler. Lurking in the dark shadows, eliminate your own aura and reduce your presence. In stealth mode, the enemy will not be able to see you beyond a certain visual distance, 10 meters. A translucent figure can be seen within 10 meters, and normal vision can only be obtained within 5 meters. At night, it provides Nightcrawler with night vision within 100 meters, doubling the stealth effect and increasing movement speed. Note: after Nightcrawler initiates an attack, the stealth state will be released and it will be inaccessible for 10 seconds. Nightcrawler can be forced to teleport and escape with a range of 1 kilometer and a cooldown of 24 hours. Blue Ability Card. This is the blue quality ability card. As previously determined, it is far from the professional or proficient level that the Superman class can achieve, and can be classified as a super ability. After Kyle obtained the stealth card, the individual strength he can now exert can no longer be framed by the definition of human abilities. Stealth begins, Kyle muttered to himself as his eyes began to turn dark red. His vision within 100 meters at night suddenly became clear. At the same time, his body seemed to be wrapped in a mist, looming in the night. In Nightcrawler mode, Kyle, holding a Nepalese machete in hand, trotted towards the enemy base half a mile away, sneaking in stealth mode, with even the sound of his boots hitting the ground barely audible. After safely approaching the enemy base, Kyle suddenly stopped and looked over from a distance of 50 meters. The rows of lights hanging high on the iron fence are translucent. Once a person's figure is exposed under the lights, the increase in stealth and invisibility will be greatly weakened. Kyle was still thinking about how to sneak into the base when suddenly, from 100 meters behind him, two beams of light slightly illuminated the night sky of the wilderness, and a German military vehicle slowly drove towards the main gate of the base. Supply military vehicle? Kyle's mind moved, and he moved towards the military vehicle while maintaining stealth. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of light and frequent footsteps quietly rang out on the deserted plain. Kyle sneaked to the front side of the military vehicle, and seeing the front of the vehicle about to crash into him, he rushed forward without being exposed. Whoa! The German soldier who was driving was dozing off when he suddenly saw a figure rushing out in front of the empty car. He was so frightened that his hair stood up, and he subconsciously stepped on the brakes. He opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, a flash of knife light rushed in from the car window, instantly wiping out his words and his life. Stealth, assassination, and corpse disposal, the entire process flowed smoothly, as if it had been rehearsed many times. The military vehicle stopped and stalled. Kyle coldly threw the German soldier with his throat slit out of the driver's seat. It was a bit like killing monsters to get equipment in online games. Several item cards that could be extracted emerged from the corpse lying on the ground. German soldier identity card, German soldier combat suit, German pistol. After a while, the military vehicle restarted on the road and drove towards the main gate of the German base ahead. Chapter 14. Girl and Killing Large Base in Germany. The 3-meter-high iron net surrounds the large base as firmly and reliably as a bucket. The main gate, the only one without iron net protection, also has a battery fortress and is guarded by nearly 30 well-equipped German soldiers. It was late at night, and many guards were yawning slightly. At this moment, with the sound of an engine, a German military vehicle drove towards the main gate from a distance. Stop! Stop! Even though they could see it was their own car, the guards still lowered the barrier at the main gate and stopped the military car. What's going on? The bearded captain of the security guard came forward with a team of armed soldiers, knocking on the car window to inquire. The window of the military vehicle rolled down quickly, and the driver inside, wearing a flat leather hat, handed the soldier's ID through the window and replied hoarsely in German, military supplies. Routine inspection. The captain of the guard waved his hand, and 3 or 4 soldiers immediately stepped forward to check the supplies in the rear compartment of the vehicle. In less than half a moment, the soldiers returned to the captain of the guard in a panic and whispered a few words into his ear. Noticing the captain of the security guard's gaze returning to him, Kyle, who was pretending to be the driver, raised his eyebrows and subconsciously lowered the brim of his hat so that the shadow covered most of his young face. Exposed? Kyle's face was expressionless, but his body was secretly tense. As long as the German guards realized his identity, he would immediately use the forced teleportation that came with stealth to escape. The captain of the guard waved his hand, asking the inspecting soldiers to step back, and he walked forward alone to the window of the military vehicle. Just as Kyle was secretly on guard, the captain of the security guard suddenly smiled from his serious face. He cheerfully took out a rolled cigarette from his trouser pocket and handed it to Kyle. "Brother, you are still helping the commander with his mission so late at night. You are really working hard." Kyle took the cigarette naturally and responded coldly, "You're welcome. This is what I should do." "Okay, let them in," the captain of the security guard shouted, and the barrier at the main gate of the base was immediately opened. Kyle didn't waste any time. He stepped deeply with his right foot, and the military vehicle roared into the base. Large bases are not as simple as temporary combat territories, especially German bases known for their strict military discipline. There are driveways inside that can accommodate 2 cars in parallel, and various wooden or tent-built camp houses are lined up on both sides. Even inside the base, there were lights at regular intervals, and patrol teams of 6 German soldiers were wandering around. Kyle glanced at the distribution of the patrol team while driving the car deep into the base, to the supply storage area where a large number of vehicles were parked. The supply garage area was quiet and empty, and Kyle took the opportunity to shut off his car and stop. He was not in a hurry to enter stealth mode, but went straight to the back of the car. I was careless just now and forgot to check what the robbed military vehicle was transporting. How could the captain of the base's guard offer a cigarette and compliment a mere driver like me? Kyle muttered to himself, quietly grasping the card-like Nepalese military knife in his right hand and pulling down the gate of the car's rear compartment with the other hand. Squeak! The iron door of the rear compartment of the car opened, and at the same time, a faint whimpering sound was heard from inside. What is this? Kyle frowned and leaped lightly into the rear warehouse. The dark vision inside gradually became clear, and the so-called military equipment turned out to be a young girl. Right, she was a white girl who looked only about 16 years old, with brilliant golden curly hair wet with sweat. Even in the dim light, it was difficult to conceal her delicate and beautiful face like a porcelain doll. She was only wearing a thin, white dress. Her immature figure was already showing its gracefulness. She was tied up with military ropes all over her body, with tape on her mouth, and was curled up in a large wooden box. There was a white paper label on the large wooden box, which read in German, "Supplies collected from Europe to Commander Leo." These beasts. Seeing this, Kyle gritted his teeth, and an irrepressible fire of anger surged in his heart. Although he did not hate war, he was never interested in the evil acts of invading land and homes and snatching young girls as supplies. When the blonde girl in the box saw someone coming in, her beautiful blue eyes were filled with tears and fear. As her mouth was taped, she couldn't speak and could only make woo-woo sounds of struggle. "Don't be afraid," Kyle said, moving closer, but the girl became even more panicked and frightened. "Ah!" Kyle suddenly realized something, smiled bitterly, and changed his words back to authentic English. "Don't worry. I'm an American soldier. I won't hurt you." Fearing that this was not enough, Kyle took off his hat, revealing his handsome young European face. This time, the girl finally calmed down. Sure enough, no matter what era it is an era of appearance. "Don't make a sound. I will get you out." Kyle picked up the Nepalese machete and cut the rope on the girl. When even the tape was torn off, the blonde girl couldn't help hugging his waist anymore and cried weakly. "You're safe," Kyle said with a smile, stroking the girl's beautiful blonde hair soothingly. Suddenly, a question was heard in German from outside the car. "Who's in there?" The girl in Kyle's arms suddenly stopped crying and began to tremble all over. "Don't make any noise. I'll deal with them," Kyle whispered, then raised his head. The gentleness on his face quickly turned into indifference, and a cold light condensed in his eyes. He answered in a hoarse German voice, "My name is Bern. There are supplies in the car for Chief Leo. Can you come over and help carry them?" Understood. The patrol team leader outside the car had no doubts. He responded quickly and led 5 soldiers to the back compartment of the military vehicle. The patrol leader and 2 soldiers entered the back warehouse first. When they shone their flashlights inside, they saw only the blonde girl lying huddled and shivering in the box. The patrol captain's puzzled voice had just fallen when a figure suddenly rolled down from the top of the rear warehouse. Hust! The Nepalese machete cut through the air in the darkness. Quickly, accurately, and sharply, the blade brushed across the throats of the 3 people in the back compartment of the car, and warm scarlet blood splashed everywhere. Kyle killed the 3 soldiers in the car in an instant. Without even taking a breath, he leaped towards the other 3 soldiers outside the car like a murderous cheetah. A distance of 4 or 5 meters only takes less than half a second for the explosive attack of the top human physique. Kyle raised his knife and slashed, sending the 4th German soldier's head flying high. The sharp saber, combined with the powerful force of the bowl, even cut off the cervical vertebrae in his neck. There were two other German soldiers with their eyes wide open, their extreme fear slowing down their body reactions. They wanted to fight back with guns, to shout, to run, but all of these were just thoughts. The actual actions were simply wiped out the next moment. Kyle stabbed one of the soldiers' heart with his saber in one hand, and with his other arm, he clamped the last soldier's neck tightly and rubbed him hard on the ground. The two soldiers could only struggle a little, but they soon lost their vitality and turned into cold corpses in the hands of Kyle, who killed them directly. Chapter 15, Hidden Basement Tick. Thick blood dripped onto the ground along the slightly curved blade of the Nepali army knife. The bodies of 6 German soldiers moved from the back compartment of the vehicle to the outside of the vehicle, and one by one they collapsed to the ground, becoming corpses. Kyle let out a long breath, his heart still beating in an excited state, adrenaline and blood flowing through his body, and a lot of sweat overflowing from his forehead. In order to prevent even a single German soldier from sounding a warning and alerting the enemy forces in the base. During the 5 seconds of the killing, Kyle had already maximized his physical strength and many ability cards for fighting skills. Kyle did not dare to slack off and hurriedly checked the surrounding environment to make sure that he did not disturb other German soldiers. He simply wiped the Nepalese machete on the clothes of a corpse, cleaned the blood off the blade, and put it back into the cowhide sheath at his waist. Then, Kyle moved the 3 bodies of soldiers outside the car into the back compartment. During the transportation process, the rescued girl poked her head out of the wooden box. The blonde girl looked at the 6 piled-up corpses in front of her. The fear she had just felt disappeared. Her gaze shifted to Kyle, who was unharmed, and shock appeared in her big eyes. German soldiers. They are brave, well-equipped, and have a strict and standardized military style. In the eyes of civilians, each of them is a killing machine. But these 6 powerful soldiers all fell under the young man's sword in a short period of time, without even a chance to call for help. If you didn't see it with your own eyes, who would dare to believe such a magnificent record? The girl mustered up her strength and whispered to Kyle, "Thank you." Kyle shrugged and panted, "It's too early to thank you now. We are in a large German base." The girl was slightly stunned, obviously not yet figuring out her current situation. "I don't have time to explain to you. Just hide here and don't make any noise. I will come back and rescue you later." After Kyle finished speaking, he quickly left the rear compartment and closed the iron door at the rear of the car. Although it is not good to lock up a pretty girl with 6 corpses, he can't care about that now. In order to sneak into the base, he wasted some time, and now there are only about 20 minutes left before the planned attack time of the raid mission. The time is up. Even if their troops did not launch an action, the other 4 troops would launch attacks on the other 4 enemy camps. By then, the large base here would be alerted and the so-called surprise attack would be meaningless. Stealth begins. Kyle held a saber in his hand, turned on stealth, and entered Nightcrawler mode, then headed straight for the house inside the base. Tap, tap, tap. He sneaked past a patrol team in the shadows 5 meters away and trotted past them without any of the other soldiers noticing. There are lights and patrols at short intervals in the base, but as long as the lights are not on and the troops are not fully deployed, leaving room for the darkness of the night, Kyle can move smoothly in the base quietly. In the dark, if you have a good sense of distance of the surrounding environment, stealth can achieve an excellent effect far beyond invisibility. Kyle sneaked all the way and soon stopped in the corner in front of a wooden house. The biggest difference between the house in front of him and other houses is that the patrol team deployed in the surrounding area is more than twice as strong, and there is also a soldier guarding the door of the house. Is this the officer's resting place? The headquarters? Kyle was surprised. The door of the house was not locked, but ajar. If we can get rid of the commander of the base first, then the plan of sneaking in alone will be half successful. The question is how to sneak into the house ahead. Kyle frowned, then suddenly remembered something, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. In front of the huge house, the soldier guard stood beside the door like a big poplar, holding the gun in his motionless hand, keeping a high level of vigilance and alert everywhere. Even if this is inside our own base, it is no exception, because the things stored in the house are items that the officers must ensure not to neglect. Just one more hour, and someone will take over. The guard was thinking this when suddenly a black creature fell from the sky and hit him in the face with its wings flapping. Bat! The guard was stunned and reached out to grab it, but he didn't expect the bat to be so aggressive that it bit him right under the corner of his eye and refused to let go. Get out of here! The guard closed his eyes in pain, fell back against the door, and angrily grabbed the bat with both hands. In this gap in defense, an indistinct figure quickly passed by him and crossed the door of the house. What's going on? A patrol team quickly rushed to the scene to inquire, but saw the guard angrily throwing the bat to the ground and spitting. Bah! It's nothing, just a bat. Seeing this funny scene, the patrol team looked at each other in bewilderment. The door of the house was closed by the security guard, and a clear silhouette gradually emerged from the darkness inside. It was Kyle, who was still in stealth mode. Bio cards are much more practical than I imagined. Kyle muttered to himself. It was just a white bio card, but it exerted huge amounts of miraculous effects in this situation. This is also due to the inherent characteristic of the biological card, obedience. The creatures summoned from the creature cards can all obey the orders of their masters obediently, which avoids many accidents and makes them true biological weapons. Okay, let me see what this is used for first. Kyle's eyes fell on the lobby of the house. The moment he entered, he knew that this was not a command center or a resting place. The layout is more like a material storage warehouse. Inside the huge building, there are several rows of densely packed shelves and boxes of various sizes are stacked together. There was no need to open the boxes to check. As Kyle's attention increased, a series of extractable item card messages appeared on each box. German rifle, rifle bullet, anti-infantry jumping mine, detonator grenade. Arsenal? Kyle's eyes lit up. This was a much higher priority than the headquarters. After all, finding the headquarters would only threaten the commander's life. But finding this would mean holding the lifeline of this large base in one's hands. Kyle walked into the house and drew some munitions into cards at a frequency of once every 3 seconds. He walked all the way to the innermost part of the house, stopped suddenly, squatted down, and tapped the floor with his fingers a few times, and a subtle hollow sound of dong 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 was heard. Turtle, is there a hidden basement under this armory? Kyle smiled slightly. This little trick couldn't be hidden from him. I quickly found the basement floor and went down the stairs. However, the basement, which was thought to be pitch black, was actually glowing with a mysterious blue light. After entering the basement, the first thing that caught Kyle's eyes was a whole box of cube-shaped blue light energy bodies. When exposed to the air, people could clearly feel the huge energy contained in them. Chapter 16, Infinite Energy Magic Cube Remaining Energy. The new energy developed through Tesseract can provide tanks and guns with powerful and amazing destructive power, and it is an infinite energy that exists in the concept. Blue item card. Extraction. The above is the card message displayed by the square-shaped blue light energy body. Oh my god! Kyle's face was filled with shock, and his usually calm state of mind could not help but waver. He didn't expect to be dealing with god-level items from the Marvel world so soon. Tesseract, a truly god-level item. It is the first container of space gems to appear on Earth. The Space Stone is one of the 6 Infinity Stones and is a cosmic artifact. That's right. During World War II, the Tesseract was found by the Hydra organization, which used it to develop and produce endless energy for use in the war. Kyle looked at the energy block in front of him with shock and broke out in a cold sweat for himself and the U.S. troops in the temporary combat zone. To this day, this energy source has not yet been deployed on the front lines. Apparently, the German army has just developed it and has not yet officially put it into use. If they didn't know this news, facing the German army that suddenly had a new energy boost, it is very likely that the front lines in Europe would suffer a devastating disaster. But now it happens to be a good deal for me. Kyle excitedly picked up an energy cube. One energy cube could be used as a blue item card. This kind of high-quality item was the best material for sacrifice. This box has about $20, right? Kyle was about to start drawing cards when a slight voice suddenly sounded behind him. His face changed, and before he could react, the back of his head was hit by a cold metal object. "Don't move, or I'll blow your head off," the man with the gun behind him said in German. With a mechanical click, the safety of the pistol he was holding was already released. I was careless. Kyle tensed up and sighed inwardly. He didn't expect that he had let down his guard when drawing the card, and he didn't expect that there was someone in this hidden basement. Put what you have in your hands back and raise your hands. The man continued in a commanding and tough tone. Don't shoot, Kyle said as he put the energy block in his hand back into the box and raised his hands high. In this life and death situation, Kyle was calmly thinking about countermeasures. The simplest way is to use stealth to force a transfer and leave the enemy base, but this is a last resort. Very good. I didn't expect you to speak German. You are worthy of being a U.S. Army rat who can sneak into my base. The man said coldly, and he didn't mean to shoot immediately, which made Kyle give up the idea of forced transfer. What do you want to do by sneaking in here? The man continued to ask. This time Kyle remained silent and did not answer. Oh, I'll find a way to make you talk. The man snorted coldly, holding the pistol against the back of Kyle's head, and took out the walkie-talkie with his other hand. Hello, this is Commander Leo. Quickly send soldiers to the basement of warehouse number 2. There is a little mouse of the U.S. Army here. It turns out that this guy is Commander Leo, who asked people to provide the girls with supplies, and he should also be the supreme commander of this large base. Kyle still held his hands up motionlessly, but at some point, a card had quietly turned from virtual to real and was sandwiched between his fingers. Captain Leo, without waiting for the man behind him to finish his conversation, Kyle suddenly said indifferently, "Do you know this saying in my hometown?" Commander Leo was slightly stunned, hung up the intercom, and asked coldly, "What?" He held the pistol tightly against the back of Kyle's head, ready to pull the trigger if there was any movement. Kyle replied softly, "That sentence is, villains die because they talk too much." Villain? Commander Leo frowned. Before he understood the meaning of this sentence, a vicious dog suddenly emerged from the darkness. Its ferocious fangs flashed coldly, and it bit his wrist holding the gun. Evil dog summons a rabid and ferocious vicious dog to fight for you. Green bio card. Ah! Commander Leo fell to the ground, holding his hands and wailing. The vicious dog seemed to be a large Tibetan Mastiff. Its eyes were glowing green, and its amazing bite force tore a large piece of flesh from his wrist, revealing the white bones. I'm the protagonist tonight, so of course you are the villain. Kyle curved his lips and stroked the furry fur on the vicious dog. Please don't kill me. Even if you kill me, I won't be able to leave here alive. With a strong desire to survive, Commander Leo, who had just looked majestic and iron-blooded, begged for mercy. Don't worry, I won't kill you, Kyle said with a smile. Before Commander Leo could show any joy on his face, the next sentence made him pale. I hate it most when someone points a gun at my head. So, just feed it to the dog. As soon as the words fell, as if the vicious dog next to him understood Kyle's instructions, it roared and pounced, biting Captain Leo directly on the neck. Ignore the other party's screams and the hellish scene of vicious dogs gnawing at people. Kyle began to extract the energy blocks in the basement. After all, even if it happens every 3 seconds, it will take more than a minute to process more than 20 energy blocks. After receiving the call from the commander, the German soldiers in the base should have gathered here. In 1 minute, we must destroy the base's defense mechanism and break out of the enemy base. Time is running out. Kyle raised his eyebrows, but did not stop drawing the energy item card. Instead, he took out another creature card from the card space. Toxic Hornet's Nest summons a hive with hundreds of hornets. The hornets are extremely poisonous and can kill people within half an hour. Rare green item card. Current status: one-time summon only, lasts half an hour. Use? Now is when you can be of greatest use, Kyle said meaningfully. At this time, in the mountain forest next to the large base, hundreds of American soldiers were hiding with solemn faces. The leader, Sergeant Fury, clenched his fists impatiently, anxiously waiting for something. Captain Fury, the scheduled raid time is almost up. What should we do? George couldn't help but ask. Wait a little longer, Fury said in a deep voice. Even he didn't know what he was waiting for. Maybe Kyle was killed before he even sneaked into the base. Even if Kyle managed to sneak into the base, How could he destroy the defense mechanism composed of thousands of soldiers and sophisticated equipment with his ability alone? Wait another 5 minutes. If there is no movement in the large base after 5 minutes, cancel the raid mission immediately and return. Fury took a deep breath. At this moment, he heard the exclamations of many soldiers around him. Captain Fury, there seems to be movement in the enemy's large base. Chapter 17. Thrilling breakout, a large German military base. In front of warehouse number 2, nearly 100 German soldiers, holding sophisticated German-made rifles and with solemn faces, gathered in the open space in front of the warehouse. This movement also attracted more patrol soldiers to gather. Unable to contact Chief Leo. I repeat, the intercom cannot contact Chief Leo. Sir, do you want to force your way into the warehouse and search it? Of course. There may only be one enemy. We have no reason to be afraid of him in our territory. But be careful. The warehouse is full of flammable and high-risk ammunition. Don't let them fire accidentally. If you see the enemy, suppress them with bayonets first. The officer in charge of the base patrol said this and waved his hand, signaling the 2 soldiers ahead who were standing close to the warehouse door to open it. The soldiers slowly pushed the warehouse door open, and it was pitch black inside. Several patrol teams quickly entered with guns. The lights on their helmets cast beams of light inside, sweeping left and right, up and down. Tap, tap, tap. Hearing the frequent footsteps coming from the ground above, Kyle knew that the enemy soldiers had already broken into the arsenal and happened to be extracting the last energy block in the box into a card. A total of 25 energy blocks, or 25 blue item cards, were obtained. Now, start the breakout. Kyle glanced calmly at the enemy commander who had turned into a pile of rotten meat and turned the vicious dog beside him that was panting with its tongue hanging out into a card again. The next occasion is not suitable for it. However, general biological cards can be recycled, except for special biological cards such as Poisonous Hornet's Nest. This also greatly enhances the use value of biological cards. I wonder what creature cards of green quality or higher will look like. Will I draw monster cards like creatures from another world, King Kong, or Godzilla? This ridiculous idea only flashed through Kyle's mind, and he quickly put it aside and left the basement, ready to break out. Little did he know that this would become a reality in the near future. At this time, a large number of German soldiers had already checked the upper space of Warehouse No. 2 and turned their attention to the final basement passage. Throw a smoke bomb in there. One soldier held the prepared smoke bomb in his hand, while another soldier placed his hand at the door to the dark floor of the basement. Just as they opened the door of the basement and were about to throw a smoke bomb downstairs, a cloud of black fog rushed out of the basement first, causing the open smoke bomb to fall outside the basement. Ahem, what the hell is this? One of the German soldiers coughed and pointed his flashlight at the black fog. When the patrol team saw what was in front of them, they gasped with a tingling scalp and their faces turned pale with fear. It was obviously not black fog, but hundreds of dark brown wasps, each of which was half a time bigger than a marble, densely packed together. Hornet, there's a poisonous wasp inside. Oh my God! Run! Get out of here! The German soldiers in the warehouse rushed out in fear, hoping against hope that they had not disturbed them. However, after leaving the basement, the poisonous hornets seemed to be organized and purposeful, chasing after them madly and attacking the soldiers' unprotected faces with their stingers. In just a short moment, dozens of soldiers fled out of the warehouse in defeat. Many soldiers who were stung by hornets fell to the ground in pain, holding their faces and rolling around wailing. Kyle came out of the basement at the tail end of the swarm. Seeing this scene, he was also surprised and whispered to himself, "It's just a rare green creature card, but this is really amazing. But the raid time for the mission has come. I don't have time to play with you. I must leave here as soon as possible." Ignoring the German soldiers, Kyle, holding the Nepalese knife in his hand, quickly disappeared in the darkness. Stealth starts. Kyle, in Nightcrawler mode, took advantage of the huge commotion inside and outside the warehouse, flexibly weaving between the hornets and soldiers, and began to return to the area where the military vehicle had just stopped. Due to the hustle and bustle of Warehouse No. 2 in the central area of the base, there were not many patrol teams in the parking lot outside the base. Kyle sneaked and ran unhindered all the way and easily returned to the military vehicle he had snatched from the enemy. He opened the iron door of the rear compartment and saw that there were only 6 bodies inside. He quickly jumped into the rear compartment and breathed a sigh of relief when he found the girl sleeping in the wooden box. "Don't sleep. Get up quickly. I'll take you away from here." Kyle stepped forward and pushed her, but the girl not only did not wake up, but her weak body completely collapsed. Dead? Kyle put his finger under the girl's nose and could still feel a faint breath, proving that she was not dead yet, but just fainted from weakness. But bringing an unconscious person with you in this situation would double the danger. Kyle hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, "You're lucky to have met me. Since I promised to take you away, then..." He carried the girl on his back and tied her securely to his back with a rope made from local materials. The girl's body was soft, like a large quilt of high quality. This weight is not even as heavy as a package. Kyle complained behind the girl's back and turned to leave the bloody back of the car. However, just as his front foot reached the edge of the rear compartment, his back foot quickly retreated and closed the iron door of the car in the process. Da-da-da! The next moment, the rear iron door of the car was riddled with bullets. Kyle, who was clinging to the iron wall of the rear compartment of the car, frowned. There were actually 3 or 4 patrol teams outside the car. The combat quality was worthy of the German army. "I can't be trapped here to death," Kyle thought, and quickly picked up a body in the car, kicked the iron door half open with his foot, and then threw the body out with force. Da-da-da! Mistaking the corpse for an escaping enemy, the German soldiers immediately launched a fierce fire, and the corpse was shot into pieces in the air. This is just the beginning. Soon, the second body was thrown out, and the German gunfire was once again focused on it. As if not giving the German soldiers a chance to reload their bullets, the third body was thrown out right after. The bullets that hit the body this time were significantly weaker. When the body was about to fall to the ground, a figure suddenly rushed out from behind the body in the opposite direction. It's Kyle. He used the first 2 bodies to consume the enemy's ammunition and used the third body as a shield, successfully getting the gunfire to run out, which was a brief opportunity for the enemy to change magazines. Chapter 18. Grand Fireworks of War Tread. Kyle ran at full speed with the person on his back, weaving in and out between the various parked military vehicles and sprinting towards the iron fence area at the edge of the base. "Chase him! Don't let him get away!" Behind him, more than 20 German soldiers were chasing him with guns, and all their bullets hit the vehicle shelter. After collecting physical ability cards, Kyle's body was already tall and strong, and the girl's body was very petite, so it looked like he was carrying a doll-style backpack, which did not affect his movements. Having just dodged a wave of bullets, Kyle crouched behind an off-road vehicle. At this moment, the girl behind him made a sound and woke up from her coma. What is going on?" The girl realized something was wrong as soon as she opened her eyes. She was obviously tied up with ropes like before, but this time she was tied to a sturdy man adsorbent on his back like an octopus. "You're awake," Kyle responded, panting. Due to the continuous high-intensity combat, his whole body was sweating. His combat uniform had already been soaked with sweat, so that the 2 of them could fully feel each other's body temperature. "What are we doing now?" The girl who recognized Kyle's ears turned red and asked weakly. "Running for my life," Kyle said, and he touched his left shoulder with a stinging pain. Hot, sticky liquid flowed down his combat uniform, staining his palm red. The girl was surprised and said, "You are injured. It's just a minor injury." Kyle responded in a low voice. The wound should have been caused by the shot when he rushed out from the back compartment of the car just now, but he didn't notice it because his body was in a tense and excited state. "What should I do?" The girl's voice was trembling with tears. She could only reach out and press Kyle's injured left shoulder to prevent the blood from flowing out. "Don't worry, my body is not that bad." Before Kyle finished speaking, he suddenly leaped towards the open space behind him. The next moment, the spot was charred by a grenade, and half of the rear of the off-road vehicle was also blown off. It seems that they are a little angry and are willing to destroy the military vehicles and supplies at the base in order to kill us. Kyle thought calmly. His injury did not slow him down. He made a few agile and skillful sprints and leaps, used a military vehicle as a cover to avoid several waves of gunfire, and continued to break out. What should we do? The girl's face turned pale, and she noticed the danger of their situation. Don't worry, I promise to rescue you, and I have no intention of breaking my promise. Kyle looked back and estimated the distance between himself and warehouse number 2. Several bullets whizzed past his head, causing sparks to fly from the vehicles next to him. Kyle suddenly laughed. We should be far enough away from the center of the base. You're still smiling even in this situation. The girl bit her lips in grievance, her delicate hands still pressed tightly on the wound on Kyle's left shoulder. But despite this, blood continued to flow out from between her fingers. Have you ever seen fireworks? Kyle asked inexplicably. Huh. Confusion was written all over the girl's face. Kyle fumbled in his pocket with his right hand and grabbed an object that looked like a remote control. This is it, a grand fireworks display during the war, Kyle said, and pressed the button on the remote control in his hand. At the same time, outside the number 2 warehouse of the German base, a large number of German soldiers gathered here. Wasps, soldiers' bodies, smoke bombs, guns, helmets, etc. were everywhere, and the ground was in a mess. Many soldiers who escaped the disaster sat on the ground with despair. They dared to attack the well-equipped American troops, but they were helpless against the poisonous hornets that came from nowhere. What would have been useful was a flamethrower, but the combat area was a munitions depot and could not be used. You can only rely on smoke bombs to drive them away, but those hornets will sting you to death, trading your life for yours. Captain Leo's body has been found in the warehouse basement. No trace of the intruder was found. Many soldiers coming out of warehouse No. 2 reported that several superiors were also looking at each other, saying that the base had been inexplicably invaded and severely damaged, and they had not yet reacted. Damn it! Increase the troops and conduct a carpet search of the entire base, the second commander said angrily. At this moment, a soldier rushed out of warehouse number 2 in a panic, shouting loudly, "Run, run! What happened again?" Several officers asked in unison. Someone has installed a time bomb inside. The soldier said this, and then, that's all. The time bomb corresponding to the remote control will be activated immediately under remote control. Kyle had already planted the time bomb when he first sneaked into the warehouse. It wasn't a very powerful bomb, but it was powerful enough to affect the entire house. The house was an arms warehouse storing a large amount of ammunition and supplies. Boom! First, there was a startling explosion, followed by a series of overlapping explosions, with the power of the explosions soaring upwards. From Kyle's perspective, who was at the edge of the large base, the blinding explosion of fire instantly enveloped the entire central area of the base, and the dust and air waves it stirred up swept outward at a speed visible to the naked eye. Kyle got into the car first with the girl on his back. There was a buzzing sound, and the air wave hurt his eardrums. The car windows were shattered by flying gravel. When the dust settled, Kyle climbed out from under the wrecked car and looked behind him with the girl. They saw that the entire center of the base had been flattened, and flames were burning in it, burning the night sky red. The grand fireworks display during the war was truly worthy of its name. The 20 or so German soldiers who were chasing looked back at the scene in a daze, with expressions full of disbelief. Some knelt down on the spot and wailed in sorrow. Let's take advantage of this opportunity and go. Kyle gasped for breath and took a few steps outside with the girl on his back. Suddenly, he stumbled and almost fell to the ground. His strength began to fade, his body functions declined, and his consciousness and vision gradually became blurred. "What's wrong with you?" the girl asked worriedly. In her opinion, considering the amount of blood Kyle lost after being shot, it was incredible that he could hold on until now. "I'm fine." Kyle bit the tip of his tongue, the pain stimulating his nerves, and he pulled himself together and slowly moved towards the iron net 10 meters away. "Damn it, there they are! Revenge our brothers! We must not let him go." Not far behind them, the surviving German soldiers continued to chase Kyle and the other man, shouting insults. "If we continue like this, they will catch up with us. Untie the rope. Let me down, and I will stop them," the girl said with determination. "Stop talking nonsense. With your small body, you can't even delay for half a second." Kyle smiled bitterly, but he was thinking about the current decision in his heart. If his life and death were at stake, he would have no choice but to abandon the girl and use stealth's forced teleportation to escape. But now, is this a desperate situation between life and death? Kyle sighed. His physical condition was still deteriorating, and if he didn't get treatment, his life would be in danger. So, Kyle was about to say something when suddenly a large group of familiar figures appeared in front of him, causing him to open his eyes wide. This is... Avoid the two people in front and shoot backwards. Kill them all, the black leader of the team said coldly. Da-da-da! As dense gunfire rang out, the gunshots avoided Kyle's body and shot at the German soldiers chasing him from behind. Due to the absolute difference in numbers, more than 20 German soldiers were quickly wiped out on the spot. You're finally here, Fury. Kyle smiled with relief. The moment he saw Fury appear, he knew that the life and death crisis had been completely resolved. Next, please leave the follow-up tasks to us. Fury, who was leading the troops, stepped forward to support Kyle, with a row of white teeth showing on his dark face. Chapter 19. The end of the battle. At the end of the raid, Kyle had already exceeded his physical limit due to the massive blood loss from being shot and the long-term, high-intensity combat. He fell into a coma soon after relaxing. Fury asked a few soldiers to take Kyle and the rescued girl back to the temporary camp for rescue, while he continued the raid with the remaining 90-odd soldiers. Due to the massive explosion caused by Kyle, not only the defense mechanism of the large base, but all organizational systems have been riddled with holes. Hundreds of surviving German soldiers lost the operational command of their superiors. They wanted to rescue the injured soldiers in the explosion area, but they were immediately defeated when a fully armed and well-conditioned American force intervened in the raid. This war lasted from late at night until 5 in the morning. When the sky was getting bright, Fury led his troops to clean up the large base. Even though it was a crushing and one-sided battle, 27 soldiers were still killed. But the results were incredible. Combined with Kyle's personal achievements, their troops' raid mission wiped out about 1,200 German soldiers stationed there and completely occupied the opponent's large military base. This is the first time that the U.S. military has achieved such a magnificent and impressive victory since its combat. Of course, Kyle didn't know any of this, as he was in a coma for a whole week. When he woke up, it was already the morning of the 8th day. Kyle opened his eyes and found himself lying on a large white hospital bed. His left shoulder was completely bandaged to his waist, his wrist was connected to an IV tube, and the probes of various medical instruments were connected to his naked upper body. It was just a bullet wound. Is it that exaggerated? Kyle smiled bitterly and realized that he had been unconscious for a long time this time. After all, during the period of losing consciousness, his mind was trapped in the card space. But now he feels full of energy and his body should have recovered almost completely. After separating the infusion and the instrument probe, Kyle pressed the wound on his left shoulder with his hand. He could still vaguely feel a little pain, and then
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.